Did you get a contact from Joe? I don't know if this is a secret and we're not supposed to talk about it.
Is that he's working on a video?
Yeah, about the specifics around the video.
I did, yeah, I did get a contact. I didn't realize it was a secret. I'm glad I didn't do it. I almost added a little thing at the end of the video I just put out. I almost put a thing at the end of my video saying like, "Hey, check out, he's gonna be making something soon," kind of hype it up.
Hype it
But
up.
I mean,
Yeah.
Joe, go get his own hype. You don't need me. But I'm excited for
So
it.
did he took you to Google Translate?
He didn't, but he told me about it. Yeah,
So you saw that? Did you do it?
I didn't do it. No,
Okay.
I believed
So he
him.
called me up and I fucking did it. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, so you're taking COVID and you put that in English to Hebrew. And you go to the Hebrew and it spells out Kuf Vav Beit Yud, which is sounded out as Kobe. So if you take the what COVID equals when you put it into Hebrew and you put it back into English into from Hebrew to English, it's gonna say Kobe. And so he's looking at the what happened with Kobe Bryant's death right after LeBron James took the title. So
Oh,
he's
I know.
basically
Oh, I know.
the king took the crown, and now the king dies. But the thing that got me is I didn't remember that he died with his daughter.
Uh-huh. You know what the
The
daughter's name is?
bow is golden, like
Dude, do you know what his daughter's name is?
what?
Gigi.
No way, 77?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
Right? Yeah. And then here's the thing. I mean, I don't know if you remember, I made a video a year ago, and I don't mean this as like anything other than if it feels significant to me, is Zion Williamson. I made a video about him. Do you remember this? His shoe breaks while he's playing. So it's his first like
Yes.
5 fucking minutes in the NBA,
Yeah, that was a Sync
and
Quick News.
and his shoe breaks, and he hurts his ankle, and then he's out again for months. So
Mhm.
then he finally plays again, uh, and it's right around when Kobe dies. It's like the week before Kobe dies, and I just feel like there's something there in this sort of like weird all this language around like who's the king, who's the heir apparent, who's the
Right, but they've changed the so you're looking at not just it's not everything in reverse, it's everything moved over. So the arcana are taking different placements. So like for example, like when you look at the mirror of the upper arcana with the lower and the trumps, you when you do Crowley's rearrangement, you have the star, you know how the star is pouring the vessel of Aquarius, with the emanated flow?
right.
And so she's in this Saudi star rearrangement. So the Empress is facing her when she should be facing the Emperor. And that relates to the letter Saudi itself, which is taken in the Zohar to be two faces looking at each other. And they say in the Zohar that the faces have turned away. And it's like what? And it's supposed to be this hugely significant thing. And I always found it so esoteric and weird until I looked at the tarot arcana, because you can see when you say Saudi is not the star, well, what is it then? You say the Emperor. So when you move the Emperor over to, we've gone over this before, but it's you connect him to the tower. So Saudi is the fish hook, Pei is the tower, which is mouth. So you have the fish hook from Phoenician, Chaldean, whatever roots connects to the mouth of the tower. So it's the emperor and the tower. And when you do that, you end up with what is Samael as the death card, the only unnamed arcana in the tarot deck, going at this diagonal with the star. Now, the Klippo rule the Kabbalistic tree, the lower worlds, through the diagonal pathways, which there are 12 of. And the 13th is technically Gimel, even though it's not diagonal. So that's the Masonic G, right? Because it's connecting Keter, Chochmah, and Bina to Tiferet, Gevurah, Chesed of the lower worlds. So that's a square in the compass. And then the G of Gimel connects them, right? And so, and that's a paradox because when you want to do that 777 lightning flash through the tree, you have to have a diagonal to go from Bina to Chesed. But in order to do that, you'd have to have, there is no diagonal there. There's just that vertical, and those are dimensions, right? And so the diagonal that's created in the twist when you move the letters over, that creates this relationship. So the death card in Crowley's deck has that spiral that comes from the skeleton. You have the
The
skeleton thing
skeleton's
with,
penis. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that spiral that goes up meets the flow from the vessel coming at a diagonal from the star. So the star is Lilith, the death card is fucking Samael, and you have them basically. So it's the stone that the builders rejected. And when you do that arrangement, you end up with the sun flanking it on one side, which is Raish, opposite Leo, which lust or strength, which is Oz, right? So you have the Crowley 666, right? It just means little sunshine. You can just it means sunshine. You can just call me little sunshine. You have in the formation, you basically have the replacement stone, which is what the Scarlet Woman and the Beast, their counterparts, Samael and Lilith, are basically the cornerstone of the arrangement, meeting with the sun. So sun, Leo rules the sun. So it just works out in this fucking bizarre way. I've just been completely fixated on it for fucking years. I want to make a video on that. But I would recommend just laying those cards out and looking at what fucking goes on back and forth between them. It's bizarre, dude.
Have you made the connection yet that COVID-19, what is the 19th Trump?
The sun.
The sun. So it's like the crown of the sun, the corona, the fucking like sun king.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like,
And then you were just saying fucking, were you saying Horus, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the right and left eye of Horus is Osiris and Thoth. Isn't that how that works? Thoth is an eye
Well, yeah, yeah. I
there's
think
one
there are,
text that
but
has
he's the
that.
moon.
The moon, yes.
He's
So
the
you have
moon
the
eye.
moon
Yeah.
and the sun, and then you have the Thoth is the language, right? And then you have, so that's very much like right and left hemisphere.
But there's something else there. I think the moon eye is a feminine eye. It's let's say it's like
What are you looking for? Ma'at?
no. I'm trying to remember. I actually did a synchronize where I went into this in detail. It doesn't matter. It
If
doesn't
you
matter.
made it, I've probably seen it.
There's
So if you
there's an
elaborate.
essay for anyone who cares. There's if we're releasing this, I don't know what we're doing, but if the synchronized number 3, I think it is with the funeral parade of roses. There's a
Yes.
thing in there where I go into some detail about the distinctions of the two eyes. I don't remember
Oh, really?
material
Yeah,
well.
there was a great essay I found on that at one point that was just really just commentary on a translation from you can't say Egyptian text.
Yeah.
Another thing, but yeah. Yeah, no, it was this whole idea of Thoth as the other eye, and it was the lunar and the solar. But anyway, yeah, COVID-19, and so the NBA cancels for the first time when this starts after the king lost his crown.
Yeah, and Kobe's like last tweet he sends mentions the king, and um,
I believe,
Bill, I think it was
yeah.
Bill sent that to me.
It's just what we're looking at is the fucking strain that it's not just like we see the most externalized expression on the most base level as hoarding of cash of money, because that's the other temple. When they're like the third temple's going to be destroyed. It's a temple to the worship of money, basically, of mammon, right? And so, but the emanative flow is a more etheric expression of that. It's not the same thing. It's like Purush and Prakriti that makes that distinct from like Maya and Brahm, where like Brahm is the absolute, but because there's only the absolute, Maya is actually one with Brahm. But like Purush and Prakriti, spirit of matter and like Patanjali system are actually separate. And so this is a case where it's like, they don't actually meet. So you're looking at a replica of something that is twisted in such a way that it restricts the flow. And so since they've like ritualized killing the challenger who would challenge the king, over and over and over again, cyclically, they've like they've allowed for so much fucking corruption to occur that what otherwise would be a thriving kingdom by right. It's the purpose of the Jubilee is to release all the slaves and forgive all the debt,
Well,
right?
that's what I want to talk to you about
That's
because
it.
I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah, watching this, man, this feels. So you said if you're not doing the ritual right, it's what's
If you
I
don't
can't.
allow for sacrifice, it's the hangman.
Right,
So if
they've
you do,
literally they've designed the things so the sacrifice is so symbolic and it's so drenched in metaphor that I wonder if the magic's not working anymore. Like this is, I don't know. Again, I don't know if I want to
it
release
was
this,
never
but
really magic. It was synthesizing with what is already happening in nature. So as people who are absolutely in touch with the not just the seasons as a concept, but they were in it, you know? And we don't even know what ancient people's consciousness was really like. It wasn't recorded, you know? We can only infer and extrapolate. And that's the problem with organized religion when we're relating to something through this lens that we're it's through a scanner darkly. You know, we're I meant through a glass darkly, but yeah.
so are you okay? In your mind, are you saying that you don't think the players, and by players, I'm thinking, Trump and Obama and just that sort of framework. Do you think they're aware of it, or do you think
Everyone's
this is
aware of it on the right side, but they have to rationalize to different degrees because our goings on are actually like not ultimately separate from the going from the what the emanated flow is actually we have very limited like real control. It's like Alan Moore would point out, you know, it's like the real fucking horror is realizing like how chaotic it actually is. It's like, what was the guy with Sync Book Press? He wrote a book on the hidden war and Freemasonry or whatever. What was that? Where you can just you go, people just have this notion with secret societies that there's like, you know, this like everyone's on the same page somehow simply because they use the same symbol sets. The fact that they use the same symbol sets doesn't mean that they're not at odds on all kinds of issues. And what is motivating them to do what they're doing in the first place? You know, people coming
I
from
would
different
agree with that. I would
places.
agree with that completely. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah,
wondering.
it's a clusterfuck, and
Yeah.
that translates into all kinds of things. Like,
All right. So
but that
just
doesn't negate
well,
the
hold,
fact that
hold
there's
on.
still
So
an
just
underlying
I'm gonna bring
influence.
it back to like you mentioned the Jubilee.
Yes.
So do you think? I guess let me ask this more bluntly. I don't know if it matters. Again, if intentionality, are they conscious of it or not? But again, I do want to ask just your opinion. Do you think this concept of the sort of Jubilee and all that, and maybe you should explain that for listeners, but do you think that is an intentional, as in conscious, aware attempt at going through the ritual, going through the steps of the ritual, or do you think this is synchronicity of like, oh, this is totally in line with what comes out of these archetypes?
What is a ritual? Like when you're enacting a genuine ritual, you're actually not just enacting, but you're I'd say synthesized, but you're linking it's not if it's contrived, it's not working. You know what I mean? Like if you plant a seed and something grows, that's a ritual where you're interacting with nature and you're creating something through that. Now, like us, like what is the left hand path? Like when people talk, like you'll read books talking about the fucking left hand path, you know, but it's like that's the status quo, dude. Like that's how we're oriented to compartmentalize, to to break everything apart, you know, to analyze it, to get a sense of it, you know. But that has a corollary that's primary to it that is actually like that's the top of a pyramid, but the base of it is the place of real power or strength. And so, you know, it there's an when you have a complete disregard for the intelligence of natural processes in your goings on, when it just becomes this, you know, theatrical imitation that has no, real connection to the thing, then it begins to break apart. And so you can't sustain that indefinitely. That's why I'm not worried, like that idea of like, that Orwellian like foot that's just stomping on the head of humanity for like ever. It's like, no, you can't. It has there was a professor, somebody broke this down for me one time where he was looking at the cycles of genocide through time, and like when you had like large amounts of, when you have big wars and things happening, and he was like, there's actual patterns that exist that you can show the almost exponential expression of that, but that each time it happens, it's shorter. So more people will die in a shorter length of time. And it like keeps doing this, but we're always at the edge. Like we don't, just because we don't necessarily know, what the ultimate outcome will be when things reach a certain crescendo, in terms of our development, because obviously something's unevolved in us, and so maybe it requires that duality that we've been projecting on top of the polarity, like, fall apart, So maybe that's what all this polarization is about.
Would you talk a little bit more about the Jubilee specifically?
Well, there's the Grand Jubilee. So every 50 years, they would release all servants, people in servitude, and then forgive all the debt. So, like in England now, they do like, this is perfect to what I'm speaking about the twist, the other name or whatever, because like in England, they have this Grand Jubilee thing that they do where the Queen comes out as this whole celebration, but it's bizarre as hell that they call it the Jubilee when that's not happening. You're not doing the thing that the Jubilee was. Actually, 2010, the year we made contact, has the Diamond Jubilee intro, like for MGM. So like when the MGM thing comes up, it says Diamond Jubilee. And I think I'd have to check this again, but I think it was the first film to do that. And I have to look it up.
Do you know why, right?
Tell me, do you know this?
Well, so in 2001: A Space Odyssey, there's a correlation between the prop they used for the Jubilee and what they were
Right.
going to use as the
So
monolith.
I saw it. I touched it with Sonic.
Cool. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Just as well. Yeah.
It took forever to find, dude, because it's at London Bridge. So there is that, it's the ultimate joke for them to put it there. It's super symbolic because with London Bridge, it was the scam, but it wasn't really a scam. It was just this American industrialist who was uber rich wanted to fucking buy London Bridge. He wanted to buy that bridge, but that bridge wasn't called London Bridge. And this dude thought he was buying that bridge, and he paid a shit ton of money for another bridge in England that was actually called London Bridge. So now you still call this one London Bridge, but it's a joke every time you say that on this guy. So like that movie Falling Down, that's the heavy symbolism when you get into what they're saying when they're saying London Bridge is falling down. It's American stupidity. It's a joke on not just Americans, but that like industrialist mentality where you're like, I'll buy this. Oh well, whatever.
I am not economically viable.
Right. So it's a crystal monolith. It's see-through, and it has a crown impressed into it. And the Queen unveiled it on the Diamond Jubilee in 1977. And I told you this in text, but it was the anniversary of the assassination of Robert Kennedy. And when after the next place where Robert Kennedy was to go, after when that he was set on the schedule to go, before he was shot, was to have dinner with Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. And it was within, I think, 10 days, maybe 7, I forget, I have to look it up again, but to the release of Rosemary's Baby. And so Rosemary's Baby, we know, is the same length as 2001: A Space Odyssey. Rosemary's Baby is the clephotic it's the same fucking story, but you're looking at the clephotic side of the birth. So like the 2001: Space Odyssey is all about the birth of the Star Child. It's the birth of the Messiah. Rosemary's Baby is the birth of the Antichrist. And so, and then it also, you can relate it to Nietzsche's ideas around the Antichrist as well as Carl Jung's, where he's like, even in the Red Book, when he talks about the Antichrist, where they're like mutually interdependent. Yeah, they're the same fucking length, dude. They both came out in 1968, which was the same year that construction started for the first World Trade Center tower. which is also the same year that 911 became the police code, the code for an emergency for on a phone. So
You're
before
mentioning
1968, people didn't dial 911.
we're just going to do some of our rapid fire greatest hits here. I'm just tell you, I'll remind you that we mentioned bridges uh, in the opening sequence of Rosemary's Baby.
Yes.
Literally in the title sequence, when it says Rosemary's Baby, that text comes up over a bridge. If it's a very specific bridge, that's called the Hellgate Bridge.
Wasn't it didn't turn to Kennedy Bridge or something? What happened?
Uh, no, so
Different
they
bridge.
renamed. No, it's literally it's parallel to. So I think the Hellgate carries trains like Amtrak trains, and then right next to it, what would be parallel to it, is the Triborough Bridge, which takes like passenger cars and trucks and all that sort of shit, right?
Hmm.
And that was renamed the RFK Bridge. Yeah, so Robert Kennedy got that bridge named after him.
There we go.
So I guess when we see that opening sequence, we're seeing both the Hellgate Bridge and probably in the same shot, we would be seeing the RFK Bridge.
Yes, I have no
That's,
problem with greatest hits, by the way.
yeah.
I'm all about greatest hits. I like greatest hits albums. Some people put them down. I'm all about it.
I feel like sometimes you and I start talking, it's like, oh, okay, what do you used to say? Some shit from Pi, restating assumptions.
Restate my assumptions.
Yeah.
914, restate assumptions. The universe is made of numbers. Yeah. Which is true. We used to speak in math. The weirdest thing when people are like, "Oh, this letter is correspondent to this number." No, the letter is the number. People were speaking in math. Sephiroth means etymologically numeration. That's why, like when you're explaining the Sephiroth, people think like spheres. It actually comes from the same etymological root as sapphire. Interestingly enough, Baruch
That's
argues
true.
about
Yeah.
that, and then I proved it to him, and he was like, "What?" But yeah,
Yeah. Have you spoken to him recently, by the way?
I sent him a message when Bill messaged me, and then I sent Bill, not Bill, excuse me, Joe. I sent Joe a copy paste of what Baruch had responded with the Kobe thing, and so I immediately went when I got the chance. I went and tried to look up Kobe, Kuf, Vav, Beit, Yud in the Hebrew dictionary, and it doesn't come up. And then the Israeli that Joe was hanging out with was claiming it was a name for Jacob, and I looked it up online, and somebody else had said that, but Baruch felt that it was that the name that they're looking for, which is really um, Holy One who is to be blessed, which is what people would refer to as Jacob, actually ended with a hey and not a yud. So it's kuf vav beit hey,
Right.
and that's different. It's a different thing, and so it becomes questionable what we're looking at in Google Translate. So it's almost like Google Translate wants it to sync so bad. And I'm like, it's like, okay, I'm looking at an inaccuracy, but you could even make the argument, including the inaccuracy, just based on the fact that Google says COVID equals Kobe, because it's like there's no dalet at the end. How is it COVID? I don't understand. It's not like sound like you'd say something could sound something out phonetically. Like I got one of the collages I did it's Japanese for poltergeist, but it's sounded out. So like your
Oh,
MC
it's
look at
really
that and be
common.
like, oh,
Yes.
I see it says poltergeist, but it's not like it's saying it in Japanese. But that's not
Yeah.
true for this. So
Yeah, and it probably says something like poltergeistu or something. Still ending on a.
speaking of which, what's up with fucking Beetle guys?
It's a great question, yeah. I was wondering that just yesterday. Like, that was everyone was hyping the Beetlejuice thing, and then,
Because Nora said something about it that raised an eyebrow. I can't remember what the deal was, but yes, it's like
so Beetlejuice was, the star itself was like dimming. It had like changed size and shape, so people thought maybe it was gonna like, the star was gonna go nova or something like that. It was definitely acting weird,
yeah. Is
and
is
that was.
Sirius still censored on Google Sky and every program?
Oh yeah, I didn't know that was a thing, really.
Well, obviously you haven't seen my 7.5 hour long epic. Sorry, Cassandra, I misunderstood. But yeah, no, it's in there. And I was looking it up as regularly as I could because I'm like, are they ever gonna fucking change that? But it's like a big fucking like photoshopped out splotch that they just put over fucking Sirius A and B. And I remember when you could see them
We've talked about
because like
this.
the
Yeah,
Hubble fucking photograph, there it's our closest star. Why is it blotched out? And it didn't used to be.
yeah, it'd be worth looking up. So what is that? It's the Google Sky program.
Any of those, any program where you're looking at the sky, because they all come from the same source, which is NASA. It's NASA doing it. It's not fucking Google.
Well, I don't know. I had a Stellarium on my other computer, and that was I didn't have any experience anything like that.
You could see the actual photography of it.
I believe. I mean, who knows actually if it was real or generated.
Yeah, if it's generated, I don't know, but that's like what you're looking at when you, I believe, when you're looking at Google Sky, it's like Google Earth, but just aim in the opposite direction.
You know.
But
Yeah, it was interesting. They just like literally yesterday launched 60 more satellites from SpaceX. So it's like just think it's interesting. I don't know. It's all very interesting. I'm trying not to, I don't know, succumb to any kind of panic, but it's some weird shit going on, man.
I'm just remembering to get very tense about the whole thing. That's what I need to do. I think you're killing me.
Well, so like earlier tonight, like we lost power.
I saw that. You said that. Yeah. Okay.
So it was like just like 5-10 minutes, but man, it was like every thought that went through my mind of like, okay, this is the next step. This is like of like what do I need to do? This just got really real.
Oh, I know at this time it's crazy to have that happen. I thought about it earlier tonight before you even said that online. But you didn't have power shutoffs. That was a California thing.
Yeah, I didn't have no no.
We had that. I had like uh the last round, it was like 6, 7 days at a time without any
Holy,
power.
how do you stock your fridge?
Your stuff goes bad if it's that perishable.
Well, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I lost a lot of food, yeah, but not as much as my housemates, but whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah, no, that actually becomes the least of it. Actually, well, not the least, but that's part of it. I mean, even like through this, I'm like, I went and I got some dry food, but people are telling me about what it's like at fucking Safeway, and they're like, I don't need, we don't. I want to talk sync, man, but at the same time, shit's going on. Like, yeah, we could easily fucking drift off to the same conversations I've been having with everybody on that level.
Sure.
But the great thing about talking to you is I can talk about things that people be like, if I was trying to talk to them about, it, they'd be like, what the fuck? So not necessarily, but they wouldn't have the time or the energy to process that as much. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, I don't. I appreciate. I'm not trying to get caught up in some conversation like that. I just, it was honest. It was the reason why I reached out. I was just sort of like, I wasn't able to sleep after that. I was like, well, I still have a lot of adrenaline in my system, and
oh sure. Did you see any of the Nick Cave, the Bad Seeds with
Wicker
the
Tree.
album Ghost Tree with Wicker Tree?
I didn't know. That sounds awesome.
Is it Ghost Tree? I can't remember. But yeah, no, it's like a Christian
Those
singer
seeds.
girl who's like goes off to the village, and but it's funny because people would say if you like watch Midsummer, I don't know if you saw Midsummer, Sumar or whatever, but the ending of that with the killing of the king and the whole thing playing out, but then they say that, oh, that's inspired by the Wicker Tree, or excuse me, by Wicker Man, but really it's way more inspired by Wicker Tree. Or if it's not
Yeah.
inspired by, it's just more resonant with it at least.
Yeah.
Because they flip the characters, and it seems like it's this weird thing. I'm like, is this like subliminal initiation in terms of like changing up the roles to indicate what's been happening? Because this is what I'm seeing. Every fucking ritual death, like you go, whether it's conscious of it or not, what the fuck it is, or both, I guess. um, you know, there's definitely like the consistency of the elements of the archetype. Like, did you know this thing? Like, if you go through John Lennon's life with every April 1st, there's like something relate like all the things that happened with his father happened on April 1st, anything related to his dad. And it's like
That's really weird.
you go through his life and it's like April 1st always has these really like consistent significances of and it's like he's playing the fool on the hill or whatever, but it's like you're like, how is this person like just embodying this? I had tickets to go see fucking Jim Carrey. I believe it's canceled.
I'm sure
And
it's canceled. Yeah.
he was going to do this lecture, man, in San Francisco. I was excited about it, but I was like, dude, if because at these lectures, if you raise your hand or you stand up, like right when he finishes, dude, you can fucking ask a question. And I was gonna drop the thing of like, dude, your whole career, what is up with the fool? Like all, remember that in the sinkhole they'd always show the posters together, so you're like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like Ace Ventura, the way he's standing, the whole thing looks like Crowley's version of the Fool. The Yes Man, where he's like standing with his arm out up in the air, it totally looks like the Rider Waite version of the Fool. But then just everything. There's like so many, and like Ace in the first place. You're like, give me a break, dude. You know what I mean? So I wanted to ask him about that. And I was like writing out like a whole like way to phrase this, so I could deliver it better than I'm delivering it right now, Um, but yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get to do that. I also had tickets to see the director of Eternal Sunshine and all of that stuff. What's his name? Or one of them. There's two.
So there's Spike Jones or
Not Mike Jones.
um oh God,
I'll have to look up.
Gondry, Michel Gondry.
Perhaps. Also,
Yeah, I'll look it up.
yeah, he did Be Kind, Rewind.
That's Michel Gondry.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
And Eternal Sunshine director Michel Gondry. Yeah. Yeah.
The Science of Sleep.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So
He
that,
directed a bunch of like Bjork music videos and shit years ago. He
yeah.
did something with Beastie Boys and Dave Chappelle. He's good. So actually, what's interesting, I there was a point where I was really into Gondry's work, and I so it's really funny. I had this scene in mind. Um, what's his name? Okay, I had a scene in mind. I wrote this in an old script of like being in a house, like being in this an apartment where like the apartment's like on fire, but like it's not like this emergency. The apartment's just like on fire. And I'm pretty sure Schenectady, New York,
Yes.
is directed by Charlie Kaufman, if I believe. It's I believe
Well,
he's
that
a writer.
sounds about right. Yeah.
Let me just see.
But he was one of the writers for Eternal Sunshine. Is that
So
correct?
yeah, Kaufman. Hold on, let me just make sure I get this right.
Did you say Samek? Like Samek?
New York. Synecdoche.
Oh, Schenectady. That's all you're saying. Okay.
Synecdoche.
Yeah.
Yeah, Charlie Kaufman wrote and directed. Okay, so
Hmm.
check this out. So Charlie Kaufman wrote, God, he wrote Being John Malkovich. He wrote Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He wrote Adaptation with Nicolas Cage.
Adaptation. Great one.
Right. Right. So he had done all these sorts of things, and then Kaufman decides to direct Synecdoche, New York. So he writes and directs it. But who has he been working with? Is Spike Jones and Michel Gondry. So like
Yes.
that, those were the directors he was most associated with. So he uses some of their tricks in his film. Like it's like you can see the inspiration there, right? So I'm watching Synecdoche, New York, and there's a scene where he's in this apartment that's always on fire, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is so weird. I'm watching this scene that like I envisioned very specifically, like I was just really, and I'm like, okay, well, we're coming from a similar like visual inspiration.
I'm
Anyway,
visualizing that dog that's
oh,
like
totally.
fine,
Now that's a meme, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which I put in that iconic photo of the monk setting himself on fire, and I stuck
Mhm.
the dog in the middle of it, and it's like it's fine, everything's fine.
Um, well, just to say, what was I gonna, oh, so when you've seen the film, Sorry to Bother You,
Yes.
oh, great film, right? So, uh, I'm watching Sorry to Bother You, and there's one of the opening scenes of that where like the desk collapses. Like it's basically like cutting from one set to another, but it's done with this like physical prop. Anyways, this very specific thing, and I'm watching it, I'm like, man, this looks like Michel Gondry, and I'm like, did he direct this? Like I'm sitting in the theater, and I'm like, well, I didn't know whatever. Like it was just like it felt like whatever.
Uh-huh.
Well, in there's a scene with the whole like horses, and he watches the educational video, and there's like claymation and whatever. He puts in there like Gondry Farms or something like that. And I found some interview with Boots Riley, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like basically I was super inspired by this guy's directing style. This is the first movie I directed, and I wanted it to be like him, and so I put in this like reference because he's my favorite director." And so it's just interesting to see like these other films where I'm like, I see something like, oh my God, that looks like, and it's like, oh right, this is someone who like is literally on the record saying I'm inspired by this guy. So sorry, that was a bit of a
Yeah,
ramble,
no,
but
yeah. On relative same topic, I had tried to play Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots
hmm
from the
hmm
Flaming Lips with uh, the Science of Sleep.
okay.
And I was like, why is this? Why do I feel like this is supposed to sync? And it just wouldn't do the magic. I wasn't impressed. But I was still like, the energetic of it was so similar. And I did that with the giant hands, because they have that whole thing where he comes out with the huge hands. And I'm like, that's in, Science of Sleep.
Yeah.
Charlotte Gainsbourg, actually, I don't know if that was included. I got a letter to her. I don't know if you knew that. Um,
Did you
no,
get a response or no?
no. I never get a
Right.
response from anybody when I talk about fucking sync stuff. I can build the greatest rapport with somebody, and as soon as I go there, it's like that's it. When it comes to an actual pairing, even no matter how well I qualify, it's happened to me 7 times now. Or I've gotten in touch with an artist that I found a fucking uncanny sync with, and then I'm like, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, you know what? This is online. If you want me to take it down, no problem. After talking to them, and it's always fucking, I get ghosted every time. Doesn't matter how much back and forth we've had beforehand. But anyway, I was trying to pair those and it wasn't working. And then I went and I paired it with fucking Eternal Sunshine, and it flew off the fucking handle. If you put the volume up in between every vocal through the whole thing, you get a complete thought. It's like perfect fucking. They got the sentence out every time. It's so bizarre. And then I went and I saw that At War with the Mystics, another Flaming Lips album. I paired that with Science of Sleep, and I love that. It works. But that one I didn't include the volume only because it's in other languages. It's like a few different languages. But I just left the subtitles. But anyway, I want to share that little tidbit. What was weird was like I didn't know when I did that fucking Eternal Sunshine was the same director as The Science of Sleep. And that's when I
Mm-hmm.
when I saw that dude, I couldn't even remember his name, but I was like, wait a minute, that's the same guy that I want to go see him speak. And so he was going to speak, and then at another event that I also got tickets to, Jim Carrey was going to speak. And so I'm bummed because I was like, either of those guys, I could ask the question in an audience and be like, hey, this thing happens, Curious your thoughts on it.
Yeah,
I'd like you to see that,
I would love to.
But I always
Uh,
relate to him. Like, if you're an artist and you watch one of those and it does that thing, I'm like, wouldn't you be interested to see that? Like, I've got Blondie tickets. And I'm like, dude, fucking seeing Blondie, I wouldn't get it. There's no like question and answer at a Blondie concert. But I'm like, dude,
right,
bunch
right.
of fucking Blondie shit for days, dude. I fucking trip out on Atomic Blondie. You play Eat to the Beat, which has the song Atomic with the movie Atomic Blonde with
Mm-hmm.
Charlize Theron. That's a really good one. And then there's a song about accidents never happen in a perfect world. Have you ever heard that? That's there's a Blondie song about synchronicity. It's fucking beautiful. But yeah.
Yeah, if they're not canceled, I saw her. Well, I guess I saw Blondie more years ago than I thought, but
She's
um,
only gotten better, dude.
Well,
her
yeah, I
more
was just gonna
recent
say,
albums are so surprisingly good.
well, oh, I don't know. Well, Uh, she put out an album 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I
Which
gotta
one,
think.
Pollinate or the what's it called? The the Trouble of Women or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember being really excited and then really not liking it.
Pollinate wasn't as great as some of her other more recent stuff. The Curse of Blondie is amazing, and that goes fucking amazingly with Spun. The movie Spun, and I cannot. I wanted you to watch that.
Oh, it was okay. Sorry, I just see what it was. It was what I was thinking of was Ghosts of Download, which is like I guess it has some new songs. It was like a greatest hits plus some new songs or something. And I've heard some new songs of it.
No, listen to her other more recent albums. But I'm sorry, dude, but every time I watch a fucking Jason Schwartzman movie, I'm watching a fucking Alan Abadessa Green movie.
Oh yeah, I know.
Every fucking time, I can't help it. I'm just like I'm looking at Alan, like I mean, it's different but the same, But it's like there's some weird resonance there that you got with Jason Schwartzman. You may like it or you may not, but
Oh man, did I tell you? I don't know if I've told you the story. So, all right. A few years ago when I first got to Richmond, I was dating this girl I was like barely kind of dating yet, and we were just whatever, just a few weeks thing, and I knew her roommate really well, and her roommate and I worked together, and the roommate kept saying, "Oh man, you look so much like Jason Schwartzman, right?" So then, I ended up going back to their house, and she makes some sort of comment. I mean, we'd seen each other for 3 weeks. And I just remember, like, she'd jump in the shower, and she would kept saying, like, "Oh, I really want you to watch this show called, I don't know, it was called Stone." But basically, it had like Ted Danson, Jason Schwartzman, and like Zach Galifianakis or something. Um, it was some TV show, and she's like, "Oh, you've never seen it? It's really funny." And
was it
Jason Schwartzman,
Baskets?
no.
No, he's not in Baskets. Never mind. I don't know. Anyway, go on.
Um, Point is, she makes me watch this TV show. And um, sorry, let's just see what it is. Television, Bored to Death. It's called Bored to Death. Um, and she goes, "Here, watch this TV show." I'm jumping in the shower. Okay, cool. It has apparently the whole movie, the whole TV show takes place in Manhattan and Brooklyn. But in this particular episode that she puts on, they talk about going to this spa, and it is something that it's like this spa is the weirdest thing. So we're like 2 blocks from the house that I grew up in as a small child. There were like these like basically like abandoned factories that I would go play in, and I mean I spent a lot of time playing in these fucking alleyways and like grounds of like abandoned factories, and like a very specific. Anyway, they at some point this I think it's a Korean company basically buys out a bunch of land and puts this giant building that's all just like this like luxury, ultra luxury spa. But they built it in this like poor ass fucking neighborhood. So they just bought the real estate really cheap and built this giant luxury spa where people take fucking limousines and shit to.
Mhm.
Like this is like around the corner from my mom's house, which is like a shitty neighborhood. So in this shitty neighborhood, and then suddenly you have like these like weird like ropes and like limousines going into this place for people to get like hundreds of dollar fucking whatever. It's insanity. So in the show, they're like, "Oh, you're stressed. Let's go to this spa that opened." And then literally, like, I'm like, this is weird. And I'm like, well, this is probably just a set. Okay, but that's still weird. Like, there's Jason Schwartzman, like, in this place that's like basically where I grew up. And then there's some like zaniness ensues. Motherfucker, like, goes out into like the alleyway, like goes up the side entrance, like the servants' entrance or whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it is this alleyway that I played in. Like, and it's like, there's no disputing I know for a fact that was shot on location because I know every corner of that alleyway. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. Why do you tell me to watch this one episode and I watch this episode and it has him in a place where I grew up? Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea of like, I'm not saying you're the reincarnation because you're both alive at the same time, but
Right.
the ways that souls work
Hmm.
in Jewish mysticism, the old text, it's super fucking psychedelic. Like it's like people can share souls. Souls can transmigrate. You build souls. There's different levels to souls. There's different types of souls. And like I'm like it's this bizarre the way that everything is related to. I'm like seeing some I don't even know how to explain that. But it's like where there's this describing in a certain order to things, but the order is not like um, as linear as people generally like. I'm the reincarnation of fucking Joan of Arc. Oh, you're probably fucking Joe Schmo or whatever, you know. But it's like it doesn't
Right.
work like that. It's like and I relate that with the archetypes. Like things come up and through different beings. It's like, and it also works in a strange cyclical way, you know. But when you feel a strong resonance, you know, with somebody and everyone else can see it. It just happens to be
Oh
something
yeah.
forefront. We've only been able to record ourselves like really recently. You know, first person on record of fucking turning a record backwards was Aleister Crowley. That wasn't that long ago. You know,
Right. Yeah, it's really, really fascinating. Yeah, when I was a
the first thing we fucking recorded when we were able to photograph was anything sex related. The majority, I mean, of
oh
like we
shit.
can photograph. Oh, let's take pictures of sex. And then, but what's weird is like when we first had the printing press, once we were able to print,
We're
the
printing
first thing
Bibles.
the first thing we printed was all the religious texts. We even printed the esoteric religious texts before we printed other things. What does that say about sublimation?
Well, I think it speaks to the different senses, or like, so reading a book is done through the visual sense, obviously, but to say, I don't know how I want to word this, but I think the word, the logos, lends itself to this spiritual sort of higher, almost even academic or whatever, but the like raw visual stimulus that the image is straight it's straight like
Right. Paintings or it didn't happen.
right, right.
Uh, yeah, I don't know. I just when you look at like the progression of what human beings are, and like we're gonna put everything into the most like spiritual, most sublimated place we can find to like that's our priority. Priorities say a lot. Like the first things we do when we can do things. It's like when you're moving, which I just did, and you're looking at all your stuff and you're like prioritizing what you want to move first, you know. It's like you this is going to be placed here, this is going to be here, you know. But like we do things in the order of how we're oriented at the time, you know. And so we're like going religious, and then we like as soon as we're able to film, we're like, let's film people fucking perfect. What else are we gonna do with this? Well, what are we gonna do with writing? We're gonna go into the most, you know, etheric place of that, you know, that we can. So it says something about, you know, the continuum in ecstasy, you know, which says a lot for like lust and strength too.
Well, yeah. um Even think about like the the internet, I think like what are we filling?
Right. Okay.
Like we have the capacity for this whole new medium, and what are we filling it with?
Exactly. And then they say
Um,
we only use like 10% of the internet and we use 10% of our brains.
right. And we're still just thinking about fucking. I have 10% of my brain is thinking about fucking. The other
Yeah, yeah.
90% isn't
Yep.
doing anything.
Yeah. Which on a certain level, you're like, well, at least that's creation because you build something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's the difference between making something and creating something. And then that's where the golem thing gets really interesting. Because if you want to relate to, the computer as something that we build in our image, which like even me just saying there that like 10% of our brains, 10% of the internet, and we have this kind of collective hive thing and we're all connected and we're like, and we trip out when we look at things like this. What is the real mind fuck of the golden bough? People say the most controversial part of the Golden Bough is the sections that were removed from the Catholic Church that were only in the first editions, but have been included in the way more recent editions about Jesus. So Christianity and its pagan
Right.
roots. And so that was super controversial at the time. But the real mindfuck of the Golden Bough is how in the shit did they have such similar rituals all around the world? You're looking
Yeah.
at different places and you're like, wait a minute, these, I mean, yeah, okay, people were in contact to higher degrees than we acknowledge, but I believe that you can speak to the validity or the authenticity of what was being pointed to in the rituals by their consistency, you know, for things to be that correspondent. And that's why is it any wonder when you get deep enough into multiple mystery schools, how you're like, these people are all using the same symbol sets, and that's what gives people the feeling that everyone's on the same page, when the truth is just because they're using the symbol sets doesn't mean that they're all coordinating in this very, like, as accurate a way as people might like to. It's where you seek solace in conspiracy theory, and it becomes a backdoor to like the same way that people seek solace through like avoiding conspiracy theory. Because if everything's under control, as fucked up as you might be, like it's kind of a strange indulgence to entertain levels of influence by, different groups and things, because you're like, oh, they're doing this. Look what they're doing now. But there's always that line, like Scott Onstott described, where you're like, when you go through his presentation and you're like, okay, we're looking at sites. Okay, take the measurement. Okay, and these things line up in this way. You're like, okay, Freemasons. Okay, whoever it was, the architects are doing things in this particular way, and you follow it along. But it gets to the point where he's fucking measuring the continents, and you're like,
Hmm.
those are natural formations, dog. How are you doing that? And then he's like, well, where's the line? Is it just where it's like in the sand? But you're like, where's the point at which this ends and that begins? And then you're like, so the two meet at the same time. It's how I have to explain like my more profound like sync films, because I'm like, how does this do this with that? Like, but my sense of it is that yes, there's intention in certain cases, but because of the intelligence in the dynamics of the fucking vacuum of nature, the two meet. And so you're able to do things not as mechanical as one might assume. Like if you're going to go and tweak things to be whatever after the fact, that's one thing. But like the overall, like when you have any intention towards something, you can allow the natural intelligence, of the organism to do its thing and kind of meet it. And so it's like this uh, continuum of one. Then that's why I would relate it to like the hemispheres of the brain, that you have one side compartmentalizing and the other side having the intuition, and the two actually meet, but they don't meet the way that you want them to meet. They meet on another level, and that's the undercurrent, and that's difficult to get to. And I believe my sense is like that's like when you look at Jungian psychology, like what some of the aims are in terms of individuation. I take it as like basically like allowing that to kind of like do its thing, and like we're repressing that like a lot of the time, like because it makes us uncomfortable when things align to certain degrees.
Of
Like and
course,
other
yeah.
people get excited by it. So like for you, like you're just put your film together or something that you're like you started out and you're like, this is something that's been fucking driving me crazy for years. Here, let me share it with you. You know, like like why is it like why what is the pull towards that when other people might avoid that? So like for you, you're like the moth into the candle flame, whereas like some people are like, you know, oh, I don't want to go there the full depth, you know, like, and I mean, even like us, like we're still not going to full depth because we got lives and things we have to do, you know, but it still works itself out there too, oddly
Yeah,
enough.
yeah,
It's like when
yeah.
you look at your phone and you're like, the president's getting impeached, and you're like, Simba the fucking lion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that like that's for me, right? That's a personal, very personal synchronicity.
That's a personal synchronicity. When I'm taking Donald Glover, Childish Gambino's most recent album, Awaken My Love, and I'm pairing it with The Lion King, where he in the new one where he's the voice of Simba, and it does its thing. That's not personal. Like that is just there is this connection. This is what it is, and that's one of the things I like about that is that because when if you try to explain synchronicity to somebody, it's difficult sometimes if you're using like what would be these personal, relationships that you have to know all the context for. And how do you convey the depth of the context of a personal experience for why something adds up to equal this? Because you're like A
No,
plus B.
that's why it took
C.
me fucking 3, 4 months to write this script. I kept like writing and rewriting it because it was like, how much context do I have to give
Right. It's
for
always a
this even
question.
to?
Because every time you're like, this, like something you want to present, you're like, this would be taken as a tangent. If you bear with me, it'll tie back around. The
Yeah.
attention span of people is like less than a goldfish, and that's not an insult. It's just a scientific fact at this point, you know. And so you're like, well, how do I get people? So my idea with Sorry Cassandra was that I would just do a film with tangents that I just was like, well, what if it was just what if I just assumed the highest intelligence of connection from the viewer? What if I just assumed that somebody could just follow something through, and so I can tie it back fucking hours later, like we do in some always record conversations, where we start out with something and then fucking we could have a 4 hour conversation and then something brings it all back around what may have appeared as a tangent as you're going along, you know. But you have to actually a type of faith where when you approach something you're like, you know, it's like I used to think that about David Lynch movies, that I was like you could just go drive yourself crazy because it doesn't actually tie back around. So he'll do something that's just so uncanny and so unreconcilable. And now I gotta say, dude, I don't know if you saw that fucking 5 hour Twin Peaks analysis film, but I watched all of it, dude, and that shit was legit. I was like, a lot of this stuff actually does do the thing that I'm talking about. I just didn't have the faith to assume that he went to that much trouble, you know,
But
or had that much enthusiasm behind what he was doing to take it to that level. And I'm like, oh, this actually does all fucking fit. That's fucking brilliant. But it's that it makes people really uncomfortable when you bring them sometimes. For some people, it's different times where you take them to a place where things, you're like, where are you going with this? Why am I looking at this? What is the point of this? And then but if you don't, if you just relax into it, things come back around. You're like, oh shit. But you will never have that insight if you're, you know, unless if you're willing to go that far. That's why, like, you know, I'm not, I have kind of my own aversion, but for my own rationalization or whatever, like to present things in a very contextualized way, like you're able, like you do, you know. I'm able to do that, but I want people to see something for themselves. I want them to make connections for themselves. I want those aha moments to be their own aha moments and just make it as obvious as possible so that they'll have that, you know. And it's a tough one because you're like, well, which direction do you want to approach this from? And yeah. Do I want to contextualize it, or do I want to just let it speak for itself? You know?
sure, I think there are different like there are different times, different answers for different cases. Obviously, and it's not even like an objective, always this or that, but to say like I wasn't like making this video. and there's a sort of tonal shift between the first and second episodes are very much like, hey, I'm this like objective filmmaker, not related to the content, right? Like, hey, I'm just talking about these other things that we all experience as media or whatever. And then in this one, I couldn't figure out how to talk about it without making it somewhat personal.
Yeah,
Um,
but it's not just personal; it's personable.
mm, mm.
So
Good,
like,
good, good.
yeah, you're talking to the person like you talk to them if they're in the room. That's what I got from it.
Well, yeah, but I just
When
don't
people
mean
do
like
narration, it's not always like that.
right, and I mean even that. I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear that works or it connects in that way. I guess I meant like even to, like literally like use instead of like using the word I.
Right. Yeah, when I
Like
wrote on a
I,
board for fucking 5 months at a time, I would avoid writing I. And it's an interesting practice to just remove that when you're communicating.
yeah. So it's like the first two episodes. It's like, hey, I'm just this like disembodied voice talking about objective information just as best as I can. Um, but in this one, it's like, I saw this thing, and I don't know anyone else who cares about it.
All right. What's one of the possible not ultimate tangents, but what's one of the things that you're considering including that you consider more significant that you didn't?
Well, I'm really happy. I had to cut all the uh, basketball stuff, and I'm really happy that Joe's covering that
Mm,
because, like, I literally had a whole other thing about that. Um, I'm a little upset that I didn't. I would have liked to uh, just maybe I can just do this here. Even it's just like the the whole idea of the circle of life. I mean, that song that's playing
yes.
is literally
Elton John.
the Wheel of Fortune. It is specifically this Rota Fortunae four-stage circle that is depicted in a lot of European medieval philosophy of the king. Literally, it's a king who reigns, and then the
Isn't
king.
it Knights of the Round Table?
Well, sure, but I'm talking about something else. Um, I'll show you real quick, but um, I
Are you talking about the
found,
Catherine wheel?
yeah, essentially, that is another variation on it. Um,
Remind me the
it goes
Catherine wheel.
um, here. The Wheel of Fortune from the Burana Codex. The figures are labeled Regno, Regnabi, Sum Sine Regno, Regnabo,
What are
which
you talking
means.
about? You're talking about the Arcana?
Mm,
Wheel of Fortune? The card?
okay, I'm just gonna send it to you in a second.
Rajas Thomas and Sattva on the wheel?
Um,
Are you talking about tarot or what are you talking about?
I mean, it's the same archetype.
That's where it comes
It's
from?
not specific, but there is as I'm saying, this is
Okay.
used throughout medieval philosophy. So the Wheel of Fortune in tarot, or the Catherine Wheel, was a wider used thing.
Oh, I see it. Thank you.
Okay, and you see there's these four stages of the king at the top of the Wheel of Fortune, and on the right side he's falling off, and the bottom, so it's
It's
literally.
funny that it's three in Crowley's deck.
Mm-hmm. So I reign, I reigned, my reign is finished, I shall reign.
Right.
I mean, so this cycle of the king is something that I really want to talk about. Um, but it's a whole other tangent that I would like. Yeah, you're to answer your question, like what would I like to cover?
Yeah.
I feel like this aspect of it. So there's the masculine aspect of this king kill. There's the feminine aspect of it is always represented by this wheel, and goes as far as like Will and Kate, like the Catherine wheel.
Right.
Um, it's just everywhere. Um, it's all over fucking 9/11. It's all over all this sort of stuff. Anyway, uh, this particular thing is something I would have liked to have given a little more attention to. Oh, so I was in an art museum just a few months ago, and I found this um, depiction of. Let me see if I can find it. Um, it says the cycle of life. Dikenga, a Congo symbol. This large gallery has been arranged according to Dikenga, the Congo culture's sign for the life cycle and associated beliefs illustrated below. So it has a 4-stage wheel that starts with ascendancy, maturity, responsibility in north. West is setting, handing on, death, transformation. Midnight, existence in the other world, eventual rebirth is south. And east is rising, the beginning of a person in the community. And there's a few other things that are here and just all this sort of stuff, but there's like a whole chart I found in a thing basically saying it's interesting because they have their cycle goes north, west, south, east, so basically counterclockwise.
Mm.
And the European Rota Fortunae is going clockwise, right? Same, still 4 stages, but going to the right, and the African version is going to the left. But I
Really?
found an African philosophy that exactly aligns with this. And what is, the song is what do we fucking, the circle of life is, I don't know, it just feels poignant in some way.
Yeah,
Maybe that's an understatement, but you get me.
I get you.
Um,
You
go
ever
ahead.
seen the video where somebody shows you it's just some person made this, but it's like where they show you the Lion King in like 3 minutes?
No, I don't think so.
It just shows you the simplicity of the plot. And so when I was making that video with Donald Glover and fucking the Lion King with the old Lion King with the actor from the new one, I wanted to put that at the beginning because I'm like, well, it doesn't matter when the last time you saw The Lion King is because you can watch this movie with no sound and follow it like nothing, like it's a snap.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so basic, so basic. Um, and what was the thing? It came from a Japanese movie, The White Lion or whatever.
Oh yeah, Kimba.
Kimba, that's right.
Kimba, I think it's called.
Have you seen that?
Parts of it.
You saw the parts when people do the cross comparison?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I have never watched the whole movie.
yeah. I don't know. There might be something there. That's the thing with these things is that every little part you're like, well, I could watch. I only have so much fucking time.
Oh, I mean that's so it's funny. I was going, man. This episode I just released was 33 minutes long. I have cut so much shit out. I mean, I have pages and pages of script that are just like gone. And ultimately, I'm like, I feel good. It's like, you know what? Everything with this subject has been sort of like a false start or whatever. I think it was really important for me to be able to like get a finished thought out. So it
Yeah,
was like everything that was not essential, I just started cutting. Um, and yeah, but I have so it's interesting just how my working habits have changed. So years ago, when I was like at the height of my productivity, everything was just like kind of like on the fly, just like outpouring. And now I don't have that ability to just like sit down and write. I'm not in that discipline and not in that headspace. Specifically writing, and so for this series, this 2020 series, I mean, I thought about it for months and months and months, and then I very carefully tried to outline everything I wanted to say, and figured out, okay, that'll take me 5 episodes to do it, and this episode is this, and this whatever, and I have index cards and notes, and like I'm really like for myself strangely organized. And then when I sat down to try and write a script based on, okay, this episode I've got 20 index cards, and like I had to end up going down like, well, here's like 3 index cards, and everything
Right.
else is just like, sorry, we're not going to cover that in this one. But I figured rather than, how do you say, in the past, I would have been like, well, today we'll start here and I'll come back to that other stuff. But I wanted to be like, I don't know if I want to spend the rest of my life talking about fucking Obama as the Lion King. I kind of want to like get the full thought out for once. I always feel like I
Right.
start to talk about it and then it gets distracted, or it's something that's going to have another episode. I'm like, just let's try and get as much into this one thing as I can, so that it's just all self-contained and you don't need to a 5-part thing for this one subject. How much can I boil it down to? I don't. I know I wasn't totally successful, and I had to sort of admit that in the episode of being like, "Hey, there's more content on a website or whatever." But I think it worked.
I have the same thing you have with that correspondence dinner I have with fucking Hal Craig and the two biggest fires in the U.S., the
Mm-hmm.
hotel fires in the U.S. Like that shit, like I've been wanting to put that together and just like because that's like the thing that led me there in the first place was the visitors with the visitor, and that's like Mark Leclerc to thank and Alex Folton, for that album came out fucking like 8 days before I was born. And it's the last thing ABBA ever did, and I've given you the walkthrough. You're
Oh
familiar with
yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
it's insane. It's March 9th and March 11th, 1977. The two Hal Craig films produced, Airport 77 and The Message. So there's the siege on Washington over the release of The Message because they're afraid it showed the image of Muhammad, and the hostages were taken, like 100 hostages or some shit. And then the siege lasts for 3 days, and and the beginning of the siege is bookended on both sides with the release of the fucking Hal Craig films. One about a plane hijacking and one about Islam. And then in the so I was tripping on that in the first place. That may have been the last time you heard me going off about this. I'm like, what's the fuck with this Hal Craig guy? Which I came to through Waterloo because he's the writer of Waterloo, and then Waterloo and Waterloo, the ABBA thing. Then like I'm like, okay, looking at this shit, and I'm like, well, what happened on the 10th? Out of curiosity, because I'm like, this is bookending a date. Anything significant happened on this date? The thing that came up was the fucking biggest bomb threat in rock and roll history happened in Australia when it was an ABBA concert that got canceled over this fucking bomb threat in this giant fucking stadium. And it was like, I'm like, dude, that's the 10th. So it's like the 9th and the 11th, and it's in the middle. Like, in that part of it, I was already mind fucked. And I didn't know that it's bookending a fucking bomb threat with ABBA. Like, that's weird. But yeah. Hal Craig. Who is Hal Craig? Very bizarre. Has a twin brother named Dick, just like Mad Men. So I've been working on this video idea. I started it, and it's like, I don't want to spoil, not that I spoil, whatever, but Macaulay Culkin and Richie Rich.
Okay.
Do you know the amount of fucking like ridiculous correspondences in Richie Rich with fucking Donald Trump and the way that they talk with the president in the movie and everything? It's
I've
so,
never seen the movie.
dude. If you want to fucking have a sync-gasm, dude, fucking watch Richie Rich with Macaulay Culkin, and then you cross-reference it with Macaulay Culkin in the New York one, Home Alone 2,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with the Twin Towers, followed by him meeting Donald Trump, him giving him directions or whatever. There's a whole fucking series of things there. But yeah, I was like, it's going off on that, and fucking Wonder Woman is Diana, and the significance of those specific things. 1984 is the name of the new Wonder Woman movie. So it's like Wonder Woman 1984. And I'm like, wait, what? You're like going with the thing that immediately calls up Orwell for people when they hear, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then Diana being Nemi, being Diana's mirror, the lake, where the original source of the fucking Golden Bough ritual, in according to Fraser at least, you know?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, that's a fascinating, like, the whole, like, marketing choice around that is, hey, we're not making a sequel, we're making, it's like, just like, I get that they're trying to, I think DC has a different strategy. They're losing the sort of cinematic war with Marvel or whatever, so they're trying some different things, but this whole idea of it's in the 80s.
Right.
But as you say, it's not just 80s nostalgia. 84 is
Let's
very
be specific, right?
yeah.
And so the actress who's
And
playing
it's
this, who
like
was last
WW, which like we see that and we automatically think World War.
right immediately,
Like
WW World War, and so
WW1 or
she's
WW2, and this is like WW84, like World War 84,
right.
1984.
So there was all this controversy with that actress because she was not just supportive of Israel. She's emphasized herself apparently that that she's supporting the whole game, the whole fucking. She's uh, like people want Jerusalem to be the fucking capital. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
it's like
Yeah,
this the
she's a
state thing.
she's a
I'm like
Zionist. She's like a
that's
modern Zionist.
that's the prophecy. You're like, the whole thing about Israel is that it's not like it's not doing what the rest of the world does. It's not participating in all of that. And so you're like, you're literally becoming it. And once the capital is that, you're like, dude, what are you trying to do? You trying to bring about the end times? So you got the woman who's super supportive of that side of all of that. It's one thing you talk about Israel. I fucking love Israel, and Israelis are fine. But that it's not just about me taking issue. It's just about the fucking sheer symbolism of that, of her taking this position, playing this part, Diana. You know what I mean? Here we go. And like this is the thing. It's like the resonance between the Jubilee and the pulling of the Golden Bough. When as soon as that branch gets pulled, that's the king's power. He's already done because that's the way it goes down. Like symbolically by him doing that. And so, what are the instances where we've seen this? And in both cases, it seems to be totally unconscious, which makes it so much more poignant when you have that kid who climbed the Trump Tower with suction cups and made it fucking 21 stories. The fool climbs fucking 21 stories and then gets pulled in. Remember when that happened?
Say that one more time.
There was a kid who fucking said his only explanation was that he wanted to get the attention of Donald Trump. He didn't know what to say, but he just wanted his attention. And he fucking took suction cups and climbed up the side of the Trump Tower in 2016, made it 21 floors before getting pulled in the window.
Okay, okay. I do
And
remember this
so,
now, yeah.
and so him doing that, that is the equivalent of Philippe Petit, who I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Guillaume is gonna, shrug. But anyway, when he put that wire between the two towers and walked across, he
Mm-hmm.
took the symbol of Joachim and Boaz. He took the symbol of the power of the other god, and he was like, "Look, I walk across it. Here's somebody from France too. So you're like the Statue of Liberty. You know what I'm saying? Like here it is." And it's like it's somebody from the lower classes here in the symbol of power of the trade, trade like don't trade in the temple, fucking whip you, turn over the temple of the money changers. But here we have the temple and the trade going, and he's going to do that. And like both those actions are these unconscious actions, but they are the equivalent of the pulling of the bow. So it's like, okay, you're going to kill everyone who would be the challenger of the king, and you're like, here he is. It's like Bernie Sanders. Who knows?
Right, right.
Heart attack guns exist. I'm just saying.
So I spoke to Andras a week or so ago, and he said this sentence to me that was really interesting. He said, the the rate, the mortality rate for people of a certain age, let's say it's 1 out of every 10 or 2 out of every 10 elderly people would die from this. He said, so if you take Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren and Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump and all these people that are well over 65. He said if you just count 10 of these people at the top of our conversation,
Right.
if they all live through this, then they have a serum. And I just laughed so hard.
Ooh, that's
Right. It's like,
good.
yeah, he's like, if those people, he's like, statistically, one of them should die. So like, we get through this and they all fucking make it.
What's the Jack Parsons show?
Oh,
Dark Angel, Strange Angel.
Strange Angel, I think. Yeah,
So
I've never
just
seen
like
it. Never seen
just
it.
like with fucking Jason Schwartzman with you, dude, I cannot watch fucking Strange Angel without fucking seeing Andy Shmushkin the whole time.
Oh, really? That's funny. I've
The
never
whole
watched the
fucking
show.
time. And I can't help but think, I'm like, dude, Andros would have done this so much better.
That's so funny.
I don't know.
That would be a great yeah, to make a Jack Parsons show.
Not that I would necessarily equate Andros with Jack Parsons, but Andy Shmushkin, maybe.
But yeah, I don't know. This is I was looking at this Wonder Woman 1984 Wikipedia page trying to see if there was any reason given why it's set there.
Right.
Um,
Because of Orwell. I'm looking at your fucking wheel this whole time, and I'm just like, dude, Rota, the tarot, the royal
mm-hmm,
oak,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
the wheel, and it's a really interesting thing to meditate on looking at this particular image that you're sharing with me
Oh, I love this image. Yeah, this is
because it's also
I
the
go
yeah
ahead.
the four. That's really something because you're like, okay, we're like the seasonal, like we're imitating the seasons. We're not just imitating, we're aligning with it.
Uh-huh,
That can't be
absolutely.
understated. Because when you're talking about magic, that's a big misconception when people think people are doing things. No, you're directing things that do. Like they do what they do, and you basically like if you have like a stream and you're like, well, let's rearrange the rocks differently so that the stream goes in a different, formation. Or
Right,
it's like,
right.
you know what I'm saying? And that's like making blockages. You're straining something in different ways in order to do that. And so when you do that, that's why like when you work magic, you can end up with depleted reserves in different ways. Because not just reserves like like what how you relate to your body, like if you do a bunch of coke or something, you have no more stamina. Not like that necessarily, but that you're drawing from something to do something else. And when you twist it that way, not to say that that's all magic is, but that's what the left hand path is, which just means the left pillar. It means,
It's a direction of energy, and that's uh,
but they're two sides of the same thing.
yeah,
And so when you say Yakin and Boaz, it's a paradox, because you're
yeah,
saying established in strength. So the established is the right, and then the in strength is the left. But when you say in strength, you're pointing back at the right because really the two are one.
yeah.
It's the same thing as if you say love is the law, love under will, because when people hear that, they immediately go to like if something's under, oh, whatever's above it is more powerful, but really what's below it is where the real power is. So
Right.
love is
That's what's
under will because
foundational.
it's
Yeah.
the foundation of the other thing, and so that works the same way as right and left hemisphere. The right is the foundation of the left, and it itself has a foundation in the center, which isn't really a foundation. It's just the source of the thing.
Right. But if Jachin and Boaz is established in strength, established in Oz, established in 77,
Hmm.
I don't know that that 77 is so,
Full
yeah,
circle. I mean, Haunting of Julia.
it's really in there, that's for sure. Um, well, I guess it's like the sevens are the lightning flash also, right?
Right. Well, it's that impossible leap from Bina to Chesed,
Mhm.
and
I mean,
that.
even just like the character, like drawing the character of the seven
Oh, love the
and
seven in
another seven.
place.
Like,
Yeah.
if you were to take a pen right now and write out seven and 7 was you're making the Flash.
Hmm. Totally.
That's yeah,
Yeah, David Bowie.
yeah.
Yeah. So what was it that Space Oddity was played during the Apollo 11 launch on did it come out just before that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was on television when people were watching the launch. They fucking played that shit. Is that right? Or was it Apollo 11
Yeah.
or was it a different? Okay. Yeah.
It's one of the Apollo launches. I don't remember which.
Dude, I got into a conversation at a bar with a guy who was like 80
Hmm.
who would it wasn't Jet Propulsion's labs, but it was one of the people with NASA that was building all the spaceship. And he worked throughout the whole space race except for Apollo 11. He like was like you could list them off. And I talked to this guy for the longest time, but at one point I was like, okay, I gotta ask you something, and I mean no disrespect, because I'm not here. I'm not gonna sit here and say we never went to the moon. That's not me. Just so you know. And and I have this real sense that, and I was like looking at the Jay Widener, is that his name? Yeah. I was like, a lot of that footage, I it seems to be fake studio shit. Where they slowed down the footage and all this. And I tell him this, and I'm like, and there's a lot you can argue on that side. And the guy goes, I can tell you for a fact that this mission and this mission, I can't remember, but it was like two space missions that he said, I know that they had a whole PR team and they shot footage that didn't take place in space, and I saw that happened. Like he was like, I know for a fact that they did fake things, and so I wouldn't put it past them even for the big one. I was like, no shit, and he was like, yeah, but we went, but we had to give the public something, and it doesn't mean that there's no footage in space. It just means that uh, we had something to give to the people, and so that would also explain why astronauts would get so pissed if they get accused of never going to the moon if you did something but you weren't allowed to show the full everything.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You're like, fuck you! I'll punch you in the face. Who was that? Which one didn't someone punch somebody? It was
Yeah, I
like
think
that
Buzz Aldrin.
Buzz Aldrin. Yeah, son of a bitch.
Isn't Buzz Aldrin also at the monolith on Phobos?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I
So
think so. All right. I just sent you a 24-second video.
We should go boldly where man has not gone before. Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there?
who put that there? We feel it was it was intentionally buried.
Isn't that a crazy little thing for him to say?
Yeah, I've seen that before, and that's a great fucking clip. Yeah. I'm just like, there's all of this stuff. Like, I want to do like an expose on all the um, is it like all the times where people played Donald Trump in dystopian futures, and how like there's like that you can just go through them all, and there's like a story that just like tells itself. Like if you look at Super Mario Brothers with
Oh,
fucking
that
Bob
was what I was
Hoskins
just thinking.
and
Because yeah,
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper is Donald Trump in that. Yeah.
He is, and then fucking obviously Biff Tannen in Back to the Future
Hmm.
too. But yeah, there's this figure, and it's not even him. It's that fucking cartoon character. It's like when people portray Hunter S. Thompson, you know, where you're
Yep.
like he got pissed. They want to turn him into a cartoon, but it's like like when you like things like when you turn the head of Donald Duck upside down and you get Donald Trump. You've seen that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that for sure.
And like, I mean, I don't think that that's just like, that goes deep, dude.
It really goes deep.
It
Yeah.
goes super deep. And you look at Jay Coates' old comic book cycle videos
Oh,
about
here's something
Donald
I
Duck and
cut.
Ghost Duck.
Here's something I cut out of the video. Just before the Obama Lion King weekend, so like April 29th, 2011. Shortly before that, Donald Trump was on Saturday Night Live,
Yes.
and he's doing this whole like birth. I don't know. They're playing with some sort of birth thing, and he's like does a whole dance routine.
Yeah, I've seen
Is
it.
is a duck egg.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. So now is he like the birthing, but he's a fucking duck. I don't know, maybe the chicken. I don't fucking know,
Yeah,
man.
so what was the okay, so
I
this is the
don't know.
time to tie back to the fucking stock market crash, not what we're experiencing now, but the what was I have to look this up again, dude. I got it somewhere and fucking this is why I hope that Facebook actually stays around as fucked up as every. There's like that thing that happened with the stock market crash where it's like 777 days and fucking 77 whatever. Do you remember all the sevens with the stock market? It crashed
Yeah. Oh
777
man. Oh,
points, 777 some days from Donald Trump's election or some shit. Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
yes. I sorry. It looks like is it actually from 2004? Okay, so my apologies. So I think this is like some sort of like fried chicken or something, maybe.
Yeah, he does a commercial.
Okay, yeah.
It's
So
not a duck, is it?
it's not a duck, it's a
Damn,
chicken.
it's a chicken. Oh well.
And I think this
What came
is
first?
looks like this is 2004. So this is
It's
a
funny because a chicken and egg question is a lot of what we're talking about. Because you're like everything seems geared in this direction to like it seems so orchestrated, but then you have to question if it's like which side of the Scott Onstott continuum is it on? Is it on the fucking measurement of the structure and the building, or is it the goddamn continent?
right, right.
What's up?
I don't know, right. That's a great question. And right when he does the thing where it's like, well, who made the landmass?
Right. Yeah. How far does the influence go?
Yeah. Um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's I was, yeah. I was just gonna say, hey, this might be a good breaking point for me.
Yeah, it might be. I'm about to go like Barack and all Barack. Do you remember what that is?
No.
I was surprised you didn't put this in your video. I mean, I guess you didn't want to go in a Kabbalistic direction, but there's this the like so if you spell Barack in Hebrew, uh,
As a
it
lightning
it's
or
the lightning.
yeah, yeah.
If you put an aleph on the front of it,
Mm-hmm.
it becomes the Hebrew word for Sirius, the star
Oh,
Sirius.
okay.
Okay, if you have Met, which is Hebrew for death,
Mm-hmm.
and you add an aleph, you get the Hebrew word for truth. And
Mm.
so that's what you write on the head
Wait,
of the
yeah,
column.
that's right in the golem. Yeah, wait, say that sentence. Go back because I was really talking about this a few days ago. I was trying to remember
Right.
if it was yeah, I remember it
Yeah,
was is it
it's so
wife or truth?
truth.
Right? Okay.
So if it's
It's death and truth,
yeah,
correct?
so it's the
Okay, I
joke
did
with
have it right.
Met life insurance
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you're like get Met you'll pay or no get Met it pays or whatever. You used to use Snoopy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which always reminded me of Full Metal Jacket or whatever. But that yeah, so if you have the you're creating the golem, you write Amet, and then you remove the aleph, which is the life breath, and then it becomes
Just
death.
that.
So it goes from truth to death. But then if you look at Barak, so if you had Abarak, you have Sirius. If you remove the aleph, you have lightning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So consider that
Totally.
the tree of
Yeah.
life being the tree of life as you create, like if you create a golem, what we're talking about. Because the distinction with the golem is like you're not like the computer isn't a real golem. It's a clephotic version of the golem because it's us mimicking the creation act. So it ends up being this other thing that does not going to do what we want the creative thing to do. That's sublimation. So like if you actually have like a child, you're creating something, you know. If you were actually to generate a golem, if that was a real thing. And that's why in the original script proposals, screenplay proposals for the movie AI, which I read in the Kubrick archives at Elephant and Castle, I had to get a full fucking pat down, and I had to put on gloves. I couldn't wear a jacket. I couldn't use a pencil. I couldn't take pictures. But I went through and I took notes from the fucking AI proposal. And it was, first of all, the artificial intelligence is using our internet histories to basically go after Wall Street people and CEOs and politicians first. So they do it and they prioritize it where they take people's DNA and they do a custom hell based on their internet histories. And so that was the original idea of AI. Um, but in the text, I wrote it out like word for word. He's makes a distinction with what they're doing with the AI being distinct from the golem. So they're like, it's not like the golem, and then he describes how you made a golem, and even I believe it even says the Ahmet Met thing in there too. I have to check it.
Wow. Okay.
It's in the script. After me and Patrick and you like went off on this shit, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not
because I always thought this was with Hal.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Where like
so,
what he has.
FYI, when this was presented to Kubrick, and you can read Kubrick's reactions to everything in handwriting to this screenplay proposal, and it's called Foxtrot, actually, for whatever reason, I don't know. But there's a couple different writers who did two different writers who did screenplay proposals for the movie, and in there when it makes that distinction so that you know that like literally what I'm saying that when they create the AI, it is not like they did with the Golem, and then we get to deal with that because that's why it's going to end up turning on everybody and using their internet histories after they fucking died to generate their own. It's basically the Book of Revelations essentially, but the character of David in there, they say in the screenplay, in the proposal, that it's David for the House of David, and that he's the Robo Christ, which
Hmm.
which is the fucking qliphothic. It's the Antichrist, but it's the Robo. It's the other side. It's the other side, and so the Sitra Akra, and so yeah, it's fucking bizarre, dude. Um,
Well,
but the thing to
wait,
tie it back.
wait. Uh, okay. So, Robo Christ. So, do you know what the Chiro is?
Hmm. The
When I
cross.
Well, yeah, it's like the X and P.
Yes, of course.
Uh,
It's supposedly came from the Caduceus, actually.
yeah.
The Hermes
So, um,
Pax.
so there's something about like hero as Christ, and
Hmm.
then Robo Christ.
Robo Christ was actually in Kubrick's handwriting in
Uh-huh.
the thing. That's where I got that.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, dude. Fucking, he just said it. Um, but yeah, I wanted to tie that back to what the fuck. Oh, yeah. So Barak and Abarak, you're looking at three pillars, right? Center
Hmm.
pillar is associated with Sirius. So, you know, the stairway, the Rainbow Road to Oz, the
Of course.
9/11 Disney
Hmm.
thing. You know,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
1954, 9/11, Disney produced the Disney Wizard of Oz, where the lion is turned evil.
They do the birthday cake scene.
The birthday cake thing with the three burning candles at the top, and
Hmm.
they fucking heil as they're going up the cake.
Yeah, it's a fucking weird one.
Yeah, that's in one of the better sections of Sorry Cassandra. I put a bunch of images all around it to showing what is symbolically related to what. And so like when the lion comes up, I like come in with the fucking the strength card, and then showing Ozma as the high priestess, or maybe it was the empress, whatever. I have to, oh yeah, the high priestess, and then Dorothy is the as the empress. But anyway, uh, the first emanation from Keter is Aleph, right? So you have the Fool, and so you're like, what in regards to the lightning flash, because you're like Barak, lightning is coming from Sirius, but you're removing the aleph to make it mean lightning. So the life breath has been removed from the thing to get this. And so that becomes my question. Is this speaking to the conundrum of the Klipot through the diagonal pathways, extending through Gavora, meeting the lightning flash, and then restraining it? And then that's the thing with Barack and al-Barak. And so then what Barack Obama becomes as like we're put all the hope and then the letdown because no, it's not that because it's something that we're making, not something that we created. Does that? It's super hard to explain that, but does that make sense?
No, totally, I get that.
And what politics is a duality projected on a polarity that we're relating to as though it's a polarity, and then because it's a duality, it's mind made. It's not mind created, and so it's going to be fundamentally flawed. Ancient people knew that, and so they had safeguards to deal with the corruption that would ensue. And then we're celebrating doing the opposite. Anyway,
So I just want to say to that and note, I mean, so it's like the all right. So I rewatched Wicker Man recently, and there's a few things there. One is the particular thing is that just before they sacrifice him, they make him wash his hands,
mhm.
so he's ritualistically pure. And I couldn't help but think about the fucking like Corona, like everything is like wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Like
That's a good one.
I was like, oh god, that one like fucking gave me made me nauseous. It's like, yeah, and I can't help but think of that shit without terms of like ritual sacrifice. Um, but here's the thing. So at the end, the cop says, "Hey man, you know, if what happens when your crops are still don't grow next year?" And he's like, "You're gonna have to kill your high priest, right?" He's trying to get back at Lord Summerisle, and he's like, "Motherfucker, you're going down when your shit doesn't grow next time." But there was something in that scene of thinking of this in terms now of the wasteland, thinking in terms of these plagues, this sort of apocalyptic energetic that's around our current moment, and thinking about like, what if now like what? It's almost like they refuse to do the actual ceremony,
Right.
and by trying to play this off as bad theater, they fucked up the ritual, and now they really have to like does one of the big guys have to go to satisfy the ritual?
Yes.
Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
I get what you're saying completely.
Uh, Otherwise, you're, you know, we're like this idea of what we're experiencing right now, this sort of pestilence, sort of really speaks to me of the like the crop blight. Do you know what I mean? It's very similar sort of.
The scapegoat is traditionally guilty, and it was with the advent of Christianity that he became innocent. And so
Mhm.
the what people when we look at scapegoat in the Golden Bough, you're like, well, you know, everything. They're like, this is a willing sacrifice. And so this is where it gets into basketball because of the where basketball comes from the Mayan game.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, dude. Sorry. Yeah. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. I'm sorry. Like literally. Yeah. Keep talking about basketball. I found something today in an old file, and I'm gonna see if I can.
yeah. So I'm just saying, you know, it was this big deal when they realized that it wasn't the loser getting sacrificed. It's the winner gets his head cut off. And the way it's visually represented with the snakes leading through the neck, where you have,
Uh-huh.
and so people are striving to be the sacrifice. It's a relationship to, you know, to the circle of life that's we would never dare think that way today, and we see them as like the most fucking primitive, archaic, whatever. And it's like, you know, what the fuck, like we, I don't know. I question their awareness on that. What are we looking at?
All right, so I found this image. I was looking for something like some 2012 material,
Hmm.
and talking about, hey, it says in 12 you get this like alignment of planets with the center of the galaxy, blah 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 blah. Right? Okay.
Dude, it's
This
so
is
weird that that looks like it says over. It looks like it says over chicken. Itzy.
it does look like it says that.
But
Yeah.
it's chin. Oh, Chichen Itza. I've heard that before. Yeah, that's where the Pyramid of the Sun is. The planet pyramids.
Well, this is where the yeah so like at certain times of the year, this light rises up the staircase like a
Oh, the
serpent.
snake. So you can see the snake with the yeah. It's the solstice. Yeah.
Well, no, according to this, it takes 60 days for the serpent to fully climb the stairs from March 21st to May 20th.
Oh shit.
So that's what I'm saying. This I just found this image. I have not verified this.
Right, right. But this is
Um,
what you're seeing with some.
yeah, it
Where did it
says
come from?
Quetzalcoatl manifestation March 21st of every era. Okay, and then the zenith. Oh, going back to the zenith, what I was talking about before, literally, um, on May 20th, the zenith has the sun and Pleiades conjunct directly over the temple. So okay, so
That's
first the snake rises.
in tomorrow.
Right, and this is the day that I just put that thing up about the tower and March, and I realized. So here's the thing: I got to meet Jordan Barty. And I was in New York, and I was visiting. Like I basically it was like a really quick trip. I had to go visit my mom for her birthday, and before I left, I got to see Jordan Barty. We met up, just had a cup of coffee or whatever, and.
I'm so jelly.
I know, I mean, it was a short visit, but it was really exciting. It was like maybe I got to stay like an hour and a half with them or something.
Yeah, Zach met up with him too, but yeah.
And it was really, really cool. And I get all excited by this hour and a half conversation with Jordan, and then I get on the bus and I fall asleep. And I literally wake up and post that shit on Facebook and fall back asleep. And then like later, like I wake up and I'm like half asleep and I'm like responding to your comments. And oh, this I don't mean this as like adding any weight to anything, but none of this was like a really fully formed thought,
Hmm.
but it feels more personally poignant because of that. Like I literally hyped my mind up for this sync wheels and then passed out, and like this is what it came up with. Um, but I think we had discussed. Maybe you and I hadn't discussed this, but I was definitely wrote about this before. If you take, you remember what the old gators people used to call the Wii 3 spinner? Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Right. So I realized that if Mars is the Roman god, Ares is the Greek version. And it's spelled different,
Sure.
but if you take that M and turn it on its side to the E, you get Ares, Mars, Ares. What else can you make with that? You can make arms, which are like weapons,
Hmm.
arms. You can make wars, you
I
know.
guess a path that's splitting into two. There are two roads you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. By the way, Aries corresponds to the Emperor. Mars corresponds to the Tower. In the Saudi star switch, those are grouped next to each other, which is also a fish hook and a mouth.
Precisely, yes. So it's because the Emperor and the Tower are they're not one and the same, but they are, right? So it's the same way why the wasteland, the
Well,
pestilence on the waste
yes.
in um, all the stories of the Fisher King is that the whole kingdom is sick, and the king is also sick, and it's the idea that the sickness of the land is is
So yeah,
is the
the health
sickness
of
of
the
the
king
king.
is completely tied to the health of the
Correct,
kingdom.
correct. So this is more poignant than ever with what we're experiencing right now. And there's sorry, there was something I was going to say. Go ahead. What you were going to say? I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, in order for the emperor to be there, he has to leave the empress. And then you have this repeated story, like we could relate this with the Ramayana, right? Where you have where you have Ram and Sita. Where is Ram looking for Sita in the Ramayana? He's looking in the heart of man, is literally how it translates. The jungle where he can't find her,
Mm-hmm.
But there's this whole thing. I sent Baruch a message. He was looking for a reference to where specifically in the Zohar you can find this, but it's a really emphasized point about the two faces looking at each other. And Sadi, when you're looking at the letter Sadi, which is also, by the way, the like the beginning of like Zionism or Zion,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually Zion. Even though there's like the letter Zion doesn't show up in the word Zion. It's like
Yeah.
Zion.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Zayin.
yeah, they relate it as these two faces looking at each other, and they say the faces have been turned away from one another. When you do the Saudi star switch, you're taking the hay that would be the emperor, which would be a window, and removing that away from its counterpart, from its other archetype, like the face of the empress would be facing the emperor. And so because you're switching it with Saudi, it fits in with this whole description of Zohar. And so part of the prophecy of the grand Jubilee, the big Jubilee, where all the slaves are released and all the debt is forgiven, that they're waiting for, they relate that's when the two faces are brought back together to look at each other again. And so when you then take, and so you can also see they say this is just our orientation. This is why I'm saying I have to emphasize to people when you're looking at, oh, Crowley did this thing. Oh, it's magic. No, not magic like you normally think of magic. It's actually articulating what our orientation actually is and how we gravitate as we are with the assumptions we have around what constitutes strength, and everything follows. And so when you remove the two archetypes, everything has this different, it doesn't have the same generation behind it because the emanated flow gets constricted. They relate it to like a wine those containers for wine where you squeeze them, it's like a wine funnel. And they're like,
Well, that's literally what I'm sending. I just sent you a picture of that. Each of the two faces facing each other is the classic sort of illusion of, is it two faces or is it the chalice?
Right, or like Publius Enigma.
Yeah.
The division bell. And why is the division bell called the division bell? Because in Parliament, the division bell is what alerts you to vote. So when it's time to vote, they set off the division bell and everyone runs to vote. If you're deaf, you don't hear the division bell. And so there's a pairing that I did years ago that I just put up not too long ago with the division bell and Children of a Lesser God, the film about deaf people. The whole thing has sign language all the way through it, so it has this really profound effect. But anyway, yeah, it's Polis Enigma is the origin of the phenomenon that we see as QAnon. Did I tell you this, the last conversation we had about that?
I believe so. If you want to put it on record, you're more than welcome to.
Well, it was my introduction to the internet. It's when I very first started using the internet, and I was looking up all this stuff from people's, Dark Side of the Moon, The Wizard of Oz, but then there was these message boards, long before social media or whatever, when people were just discussing this thing. And it was like, I know that this happened in 1995 because it was within a year of when it happened. So I'm like, okay, so I've been on this trip with that since 1995. I'm like, that's fucking weird. But anyway, it was somebody who called themselves Publius Enigma, and they were talking all cryptically and with total fucking confidence, whatever. And people were obviously doing what they do now, which is just challenging the person and being like, whatever, dude, fucking whatever. And he was like, here's how you'll know I'm for real. And he described this whole thing. He's like, Publius Enigma, bright lights. He said, I can't remember specifically what it was, but it was like right after he said this, there was a Pink Floyd concert, and the people put Publius Enigma across the whole stage. So people were looking up, and it's Publius Enigma moving across the thing. And so I was like, holy shit, this guy's for real. And he's talking about something encoded into the division bell. And so, it gave it this whole mystical quality. And it was just somebody on the internet. And now with QAnon, it's like, how do we know it's authentic? Well, you'll see this thing happen, and then you'll know. And so people get all excited when he predicts something and something actually takes place, and he's like, "This is the real thing behind that," and people buy it because how else? If he's going to be able to predict this and this, what he's saying that all means must mean something. And so that's a very smart way strategically to direct the herd because people get it because it imbues it with esoteric significance, and people tend to be drawn to that as though, here now I'm waking up to something. Oh, did you take the red pill? You know what I mean? It's like, you know. By the way, that's the most fucking profound subliminal sleight of hand shit that everyone watches that scene in the Matrix and nobody catches the impossible thing that takes place there. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is that the
When Neo gets handed the
red
blue
pill and blue pill? Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look in the glasses of Morpheus, when Neo reaches out, he's reaching with his right hand. And then when it cuts to the other angle, he's holding out his left hand to take the pill.
It goes back to who was that? Did the oh gosh, it's False Flag Odyssey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Exactly.
Matt Pulver. I couldn't think of his name.
Is that his name? I can't. Yeah, we interviewed him. That was great. But yeah, same principle where you flip the image, But in this case, the fact that it's a reflection in the glasses and the way that, like, if you put your hand up to the mirror, your right hand is going to touch the right hand in the mirror. Right is right, left is left. This is how it's explained in the Zohar, our relationship to the Kabbalistic tree, which if it wasn't for me having like a weird fucking moment, maybe it was sleep deprivation or everything combined, but it was when the moment that we were doing the walkthrough in Olympia with the Kabbalistic tree and Andros flipped it in his explanation, which apparently is how it is in his book. If that didn't happen, like that sent me in a whole different, like it changed my relationship to Kabbalah because something didn't fit. And because it didn't fit, it allowed me to contemplate in a way I otherwise would never have.
Sure.
It charged it. Because I was like, no, right means right, left means left. Am I relating to this tree? And that then relates to the red pill, blue pill, Joachim Boaz. Right, he's reaching with the right. You see it with the left, and the reflection is with the right, with his actual hand is with the left. But you see his right hand reaching for his right hand. So that, it's bizarre how that works. It's kind of a mind fuck.
I've heard Baruch talk about
Keter having two right sides?
Two right sides, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the thing. When we're relating to the lightning flash, what are we really talking about? Because it's the nature of when you only have one continuum thing, but we're relating to everything through that there's a divide. Just like in our brains, we relate to it that there's a divide between the right and the left. You probably saw the My Stroke of Insight TED Talk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen that.
When she pulls out the brain and then she shows you that the corpus callosum is where they connect or whatever, and then that gives you the significance of the pineal and the pituitary and all of that. But anyway, it's like we're relating to something as though there's this divide when really they're together, and that just goes into everything. I mean, my feeling is like the focus that people have on gender identity and all these kind of things. It's like, for ancient people, it wasn't so difficult because they didn't used to snip the nib. There's a lot more hermaphrodites and different whatever, but the fact that people are so hung up on that, I see as totally symptomatic. Not just hung up on, but why that's a focus, is like a sublimation of this cognitive dissonance that comes about when you're relating to opposites, because we're projecting opposites as opposition when really they're all part of this continuum. And so like that was true long before Prince turned himself into a symbol, or that this is been this way. But when we like want to externalize an internal truth, it doesn't work the same, just in the same way that our brain still has this division, though it's also united. And so it's like external, trying to reconcile something that should be reconciled on an internal level, but then as an aversion, trying to externalize it in order to, like, you're trying to make a change from the outside in. And that's a lot what we see in politics when we talk about like reform. We're going to reform, this reform, this reform. And it's like, no, if you want a fundamental change, that has to happen from the more etheric side of the emanation. You can't make the change on the dense side and expect that to change the etheric side, because things emanate from etheric to gross, from subtle to gross. And so it's all backwards. And so that's basically what we're doing, is we're coming against that duality. And that's what it takes ultimately for the thing to break down, for something else to be born out of it. But we're basically coming up against how the specific ways in which we're unevolved, and we're seeing that displayed as an externalization, in the same way that we might wear like external armor to, like, character armor has this externalization in actual armor. So like in the same way that guns are a sublimation of the phallus, we take.
Oh, that reminds. Sorry,
Oh, go
it
ahead.
reminded me of a detail I was trying to remember from before. You said that Met, M-E-T in Hebrew is death.
Well, MET in Hebrew, but yeah, it probably is just mem tet. I don't know if it's tav. I think it's tet. I don't know. But yes, death. Yes.
But it's Met, because in so in New York there is a museum called the Met,
Right.
and that is where the Temple of Dender is located. That's right across the street from Jackie Onassis's apartment. She had moved over
Oh, that's right.
and Met. So Met is an Egyptian word meaning phallus, and like basically like procreation. It's the generative force of the masculine, of the with the phallic symbol as a creative force.
Where how that probably happened then? I bet you is with Ra. When you say Ra in Hebrew, it's like evil,
Okay.
and so you have like a reaction to the Egyptian culture. You see it sometimes, it will show up in Hebrew. There's examples of that where they'll do a play on something that they're coming from.
Interesting. Okay. Right. It's a commentary on the, again, the opposition there with the that of the poets.
Baruch will actually acknowledge, which a lot most rabbis wouldn't, that when you're looking at Kabbalah, you could be looking at stuff of Egyptian origin. But the difference is that, like with Baruch, he would, and myself, you'd have to qualify that, this isn't, no one owns this. Just like you could look at like the seed of life with the six lobes, no, this doesn't belong to a culture. This is geometry, or this is what it is. And so it's not like anyone really owns these systems. That's why there shouldn't be a problem with people sharing in symbol sets, because symbols are symbols. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't, it's different when you get into like the grafting that happens from like Greek to Rome, to the Rome, like you were saying earlier, Aries and Mars,
Right.
that's a little different. But yeah, there's definitely cases of continuations on an idea or twists on it, and sometimes it's reactionary.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I just like the idea that this word Met having this other meaning. For me, it was definitely significant. Just in my own research.
Yeah. You know that so 13 is the unnamed arcana originally in Marseille Tarot that became death. But like,
It's the 13th
like
letter of the
yeah, like
M is the 13th
Sharon
letter.
Tate's film career is
Hmm.
bookended by her first movie, Eye of the Devil, which at the beginning of the movie it'll say Eye of the Devil. At the end of the movie it'll say 13. And it was released under both titles. There's posters from the time titled 13 with, all the people. The David Niven was actually Ian Fleming's original conception of 007, which is why in Casino Royale they had him as the real 007, while the other guy's the parody of him. He shows up. It's very similar in setup, actually, to Eye of the Devil. But anyway, her first film had the title 13. Her last film had the title 12 Plus One, alternatively titled 13 Chairs. They made posters for both. So in both cases, you have two working titles, and in both cases, one is 13, the other one is 12 Plus One. That's the two films bookending her entire film career. The Doors' final album was titled 13. Most people would say the Doors' final album is LA Woman, but the last album before Jim Morrison died that he approved was the first, I don't know if Weird Scenes Inside the Gold Mine was actually approved by him, but I know that if it was, both were. So whatever the case. So that album 13 is a recreation of the first Doors album where it's like dark and you see their faces or whatever, but this one's light. So it's the same setup, but it's light, and Jim Morrison is walking away from the Doors. So you look at the front, it says 13, that's all it says, with that image, in the same formation as the first album. And then if you flip the album over, you have a stone bust of Aleister Crowley with Jim Morrison's hands folded in prayer above his head, with the other Doors standing around him with ferns as well. There's ferns. But it's like, what the hell? Like in both those cases, it's like, that makes it look so ritualistic, because you're like, how do you have this, like, both 13 and 12 plus 1? And like, also, like, you've seen Eye of the Devil.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Eye of the Devil?
I don't know if I've seen. I'm thinking of
13. I mean,
God, sorry, I'm spacing here. When you first said it, my mind went to something else. What is Sharon Tate and Dave Bowman cured away and Sharon Tate in a movie called Full Circle.
No, you're talking about this close. Mia Farrow and Keira Delay in Full Circle. The Haunting of Julia, which is Jupiter's Child.
That's the other name, Haunting of Julia. I knew it had two names. Haunting of Julia and Full Circle. So you're saying Eye of the Devil and 13. Right.
And then that's the whole thing with the song Julia and the White Album, and then Rosemary's Baby with the impregnation scene, if you align them, man, fucking, so the iconic photo of Abbey Road was taken within 24 hours of Sharon Tate's death. She died on a zebra rug. They're crossing a zebra crossing. If you start Abbey Road, the second that Sharon Tate's name disappears in the opening credits to Eye of the Devil, the two sync up dramatically. Eye of the Devil, alternatively titled 13, is the closest depiction of the ritualistic killing of the king described in the Golden Bough that I've ever seen, more so than fucking The Wicker Man, more so than fucking anything.
Interesting. Okay.
And Sharon Tate is like the sorceress.
Mm-hmm.
And they do the rituals with a dove that's all around the arrow there. I think the book that it came from is called Day of the Arrow. And it's about... Yeah.
So what do you make of the fact... Wait. What do you make of the fact that this movie, this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood...
Yes. You know, when she goes into the bookstore and sees the Horus statue and pets it.
Mm.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
This movie, which just won all these awards and all this whatever, makes a point of essentially it's resurrecting Sharon Tate.
Yes.
It's rewriting history where she lives. And originally, I didn't pay the movie much attention as far as like, well, okay, that's a gimmicky idea, whatever. But now thinking of it in these terms, it sure seems like that plays into it, that character, the virgin sacrifice is now reborn.
Yeah. Yes.
In the year of the Jubilee.
Yeah. It's huge. And so, that was the film that I decided to show when I did the thing with Michael Allen in L.A. Was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Lana Del Rey's album Norman fucking Rockwell, with the volume turned up in between all the vocals. And so she reenacts the thing in there. So she's in the music video for one of the songs on that album. She's the fucking Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, and they're doing it. She steps out of a screen at a drive-in theater that's remarkably similar to the one in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where Brad Pitt lives. She was shot in the same way. It's fucking weird. But she wanted. I found this out after I paired them, that she asked Quentin Tarantino about doing the soundtrack to the movie. And he said that he only wanted music that was from 1969 or before. He'd have no new music. But it looks like she did the soundtrack anyway, because that's what fucking happens, and that's the thing. It's crazy. There's a thing in there where at the end of the album, it's somebody speaking, and he's saying, "How do I know that you're real?" And he's like, "Are you real? If I wake up and the song is gone, were you real?" But he has these pauses in between him saying that. And if you turn up so it does 2 rounds. So the second, it works both times. It's insane. But I got a gasp from the few people that were in there in that moment. But at the end, it's, when they're walking up to the house on Celio Drive, and he asks a question. He says, "Can I ask a question?" And so if you turn up the volume in between the pause of him saying, I want to ask a question," and then it says, and then the album goes, if I wake up and this isn't here, do I know that you're real? And so what does Brad Pitt say when he walks in the fucking room after that? He says, "Are you real?" Because he's high on acid. And the guy goes, "I'm as real as a donut, motherfucker." And I'm like, dude, he just said the same thing. "Are you real?"
Yeah.
Same way that it says it in the album. It's so ridiculous. But anyway, you get the idea. There's shit all the way through. All the vocals in between, like some of the ones where I do that, I can't. I'm astonished at how well it maintains itself. I'm like, because it's one thing for something to sync up and for things to be super suggestive or whatever, and to move with scene changes and music changes. But when it's like answers your thing, it's like a crazy fucking sync wink confirmation,
Oh yeah. Hey, so I doubt you watch this. There's a I want to say it was 1971's. There's this quasi avant-garde film called Black Moon. You ever hear that?
I don't know if I have. Oh, wait a minute. Yes. Yeah, it's the one where they do the thing with they do a ritual on the moon, don't they? What is it? There's a cross. There's a crucifix on the moon. You've taken clips from it?
That's something else. That's
something else. Okay.
Oh God, what's that movie called? I know what you're talking about. That's about like psychiatrists in the Alps. Oh God, yeah, that's like a weird fucking. I'm gonna think about that a second. That's a totally different movie. No. Fuck, I don't. I'm sorry. That's a really interesting. The whole rabbit hole in itself. No, what was I talking about was Black Moon. Oh, Black Moon. I put it up on the SyncBook Vimeo page. If you're interested, I found this. I did this pairing with Pink Floyd using Animals and also using some of Dark Side. And it's really like the movie's called Black Moon. It's Dark Side of the Moon. And I wasn't able to export the version. My computer was dying, so I wasn't able to export the version where like I was able to ride the volume a little more carefully. Mm-hmm. But I was able to get one where it's basically like just the volumes up on both at the same time.
Yeah.
And It's phenomenal. Like the
Cool.
ways
I'll
in
check it
which,
out.
like, yeah, certain things that are done on screen or whatever, and when those sorts of things happen, where it's like, we're always doing something, you're totally replacing the soundtrack to a movie,
Dude,
but
you
when
don't even
you
know
get
how brilliant your fucking One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest one is.
to, I'm glad you like that. Yeah.
Have you seen it with the volume in between the vocals?
No, I don't think so.
So I uploaded that because you suggested doing that, and it's really something special where it goes, dude.
Yeah, and
I've
it's
watched that
with the
one over.
volume. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, I'm
Was
sorry.
this no? I
I
was just to say, like, yeah, there's something when now you're getting an alignment in three levels, instead of just the audio visual alignment, you're getting an audio visual
yes.
alignment. That feels extra special when those land like that.
Yeah. So there's a movie called A Dark Song where they do the Abramelin the Mage ritual, and it's almost completely accurate. It's insane that they made this movie. It's this guy's first movie that he's ever done. Uh, it might be his only movie still. I don't know. I sent it to him, the director, because he's not that big or whatever. But if you take, so I didn't even put together that it was an Irish film, but I paired it with Aphex Twin's album Drooks. It's the exact same length, but you can leave both volumes up the entire time, and never do they conflict, including to the point where it's literally beat matching for long periods. Beat matching. I'm like, what the fuck? It's insane. By the way, watching a movie where they enact the fucking Abramelin the Mage working is pretty amazing, dude.
I mean, I can imagine. I mean, that's like seeing things where it's like, oh, this is
It's Vogue. You're
this
gonna
is
take some of the esoteric and make it mainstream. That's crazy.
yeah. Well, and and I get the impulse. I think it's I don't think just as you said at the very beginning, come full circle here. You said that the usage of the same symbols doesn't imply a unity of intention,
Right.
right? We're using the same archetypes to paint a very different spell. Um, I think that's a clear distinction to make. I think it's when an artist uses it in a film or whatever, it doesn't necessarily have the same, not necessarily anyway, have the same implication for me.
Yeah. That's one of the only examples where I can leave the volume up for the entirety because there's not lyrics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want people to catch the lyrics. I don't want to mess with that.
Well, so the movie Black Moon has very little in the way of dialogue, so it's sort of the opposite,
Like Aria.
kind of.
Aria came out the same day and year as who's the guy who got caught in the bathroom stall in LA or whatever with the the gay
Hugh
thing?
Grant. Oh, Pee Wee
No,
Herman.
that wasn't a bathroom stall, I don't
Uh,
think. But
George Michael. I don't
George
know.
Michael. So George Michael's album with his fucking the hit song, what was that?
It's not
Faith?
the Faith album.
Yeah, Faith. So Faith came
Oh,
out
that's
the
a
same
great
day and
album.
year as
That's a great
Aria.
fucking album.
Yeah, Aria and that are fucking they're like the same they're like the same thing. It's bizarre. But you gotta have faith.
Yeah. What is yeah. That's a
But yeah,
um.
movies with very little dialogue and they have esoteric significance, you know? I love it.
I'm trying to find you. I'm missing.
Another album and film that actually beat match together is D. Antwoord's, oh, I can't remember what it's called, Donker something, whatever, and Lucy with Scarlett Johansson. That's fucking tight.
All right. I found what I wanted to send you. All right. I'm fading so hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I know. It's just,
Uh,
it won't, yeah. Been a
And
while.
I know. I really appreciate you. Like, so just to be real with you, I mean, I had this the power outage, which is just like I said, 5-10 minutes, but it was enough to like send my mind spinning of like,
Oh yeah. And you
you
work in a
know,
bar. I get to go to work tomorrow actually.
oh really? Yeah.
Because I'm in a closed off space. There's nobody but me and my boss. And so, yeah, I go straight from home to work, and I get to stretch stuff and do things. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, anyway, just to say, I sort of was just looking to talk to a friendly voice, so that I wouldn't let my m mind spin into paranoia, you know?
Oh yeah, no, I keep you from paranoia, I'm sure.
You do actually, because you sound crazy as shit, and then I'm reminded to pull my ass back. No, I'm kidding. I know it's because like when we're talking about I think talking about the ritualistic aspect in a different term. It's funny because there's a few comments on YouTube to my video where like it's funny because I'm laying out this kind of this conspiracy theory, and then I'm like, or this could just be how the universe works, and people are like, what the fuck? This is clearly a conspiracy, you know? And it's like,
Where's
well,
the line? Yeah, where does one
where's
thing
the
go?
line?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in the
because like I said,
sand. It's in the palms.
the
It's the
reason I
lines in
include
my
a
hand.
person, yeah, like undoubtedly there's an intentionality in parts of this, and then there's also all these like reverberations of the same energetic throughout the matrix. So, you know, did Donald Trump plan for this woman to jump into the lion pit at the fucking Bronx Zoo? Probably
Right.
not.
No, yeah, that's the thing.
Like that woman seems like she's on some legit shit.
Right. That's what I was saying about Philippe Petit and
Yeah.
fucking that kid. You're like, dude, this is too perfect. You're like enacting the ritual. That's why it's the fool,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, man, I really appreciate you. And I we want to if you're around, I would still like to do this thing Sunday with everybody.
Yeah, well, let's shoot for it. Yeah, I'm down.
Um,
I mean, uh, supposing I have power.
right, right, right. Well,
I got
don't even put that thought back out there. I'm like I haven't heard of anyone else having that issue. And like there was a storm here, but I don't think it was that bad.
right. A storm is coming. I thought it was
Well,
just going to be Stormy
exactly.
Daniels. Well, that was it.
Man, oh God, this is a whole other tangent. This is a fucking scary tangent. But like literally looking at these QAnon fuckheads and what they're saying, not only is it like dumb as shit, but it it shows the hunger for this authoritarian, like they want this to be some crystal knocked thing.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
like, oh,
Just like the people wanted fucking 2012 to be the fucking end times.
right. They're like, oh, under the guise of, you know, quarantine, they're gonna round up all the fucking pedophiles and liberals and, you know, all the enemies of the state and, you know, and it's like how you authoritarian bootlicking son of a bitch. Like what part of you is getting like you are seeing this as a moment of justice, and it's like it's terrifying, like because then you're you know there's already the paranoia of like, oh, would someone in the government do something like that though?
Yeah.
And then
Oh, yeah.
right, and then you have all these people on the internet who are the conspiracy theorists going, gee, I sure hope that's what's happening. I really hope that these secret arrests are taking place under the guise of a global pandemic psyop. I really hope it's like, are you fucking mad?
Right. Well, how do you get a Marine to attribute a gun as though it's his phallus and for a kill to be the equivalent of getting laid?
Yeah,
Because you know what? It's the same fucking thing. And in
same
World
thing.
War One, they couldn't get people to fire at each other. They'd fire up high, or they'd fire away, or they wouldn't fire at all. And they were like, "How do we get people to fucking do this?" And they're like, "Oh, fucking go after their, use their libido. You have to attribute the libido to the thing." And so people, when they're doing the thing where like when you go into the esoteric, when you go into the occult, but the occult is like prescribed for them. So you have this like very engineered occultism, and it's the same reason why the first thing we could print was the religious text, and then the first thing we could film was sex. It's because you want to basically create a kind of not truly like ecstatic, and like lust can mean different things, as Crowley described in the Book of Thoth, where it's like in what way you're relating to yourself and to others, and
Yeah, what is the nature of ecstasy? Is it orgasmic? Is it
right, because they're literally getting off on it.
epiphany? Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so the fucking pedophile thing too, all the people who are like, oh, good, this fucking pedophile, this pedophile. It's like, dude, part of that, not just shit is going on. I'm not saying they're not, but it's everybody's fucking involved in different ways, in different circumstances that they've lived. Like the way that people are relating to it because of Epstein. They're like, if someone's in Epstein's book, they're like, this is a pedophile. It's like, no, dude, this is someone who fucking Epstein knew. You know, he knew a lot of people. Um, the who's what and what's where and how's how and everything. It's like you don't necessarily know all of this. So the crazy mob thing just it weirds me out, man. Like like the fact that like a lot of these groups that are going into the pedophile shit, they're like oddly like getting off on it. Some of not all of them, but some of them you
But
can
some
see
of them
it.
are for sure.
You
Yeah.
can
Oh,
see
yeah.
it.
I see that. I totally see that.
Yeah, and also that like righteous indignation of like I'm not, it's the shadow, and people are like at war with their own shadow, and they're externalizing that, and it's total Full Metal Jacket, where you get to the end, and you're like, oh, here's the enemy. Oh, it's a woman. Oh shit, you know, hardcore, you know,
Yeah.
that's Shakina. You've been relating to something as though Lilith is all there is.
Oh, when was the last time you saw the movie Serious Man?
I've seen it many times. It's one of my favorites.
Do you equate the tornado at the end of the film with Shakina as the pillar of cloud?
I've considered that. I also relate to it as the whirlwind from the book of Ezekiel,
Mm.
which would make a lot of sense considering everything else in the film with the boy with the money, with the bully, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're confronted with each other, and it just in that moment it shows how meaningless their whole feud is, and so their feud becomes symbolic of like all of our feud. Like here it is at a most microcosm level you know um, you could express. So yeah, when he sees, so the whirlwind of Ezekiel is actually related to the levels of the Klipot, because he moves through these four different levels before like to get to the wheels within the wheels and all that. I can't remember exactly
Mm-hmm.
how it
Mm-hmm.
goes, but there's two different main schools of Kabbalah. There's the Genesis school, and then there's the Ezekiel school, and the two can meet, but they're coming from different perspectives. And so yeah, these are the members of the airplane.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you're
Well,
like
that's I've
airplane
seen that before. You're saying
for
windmills.
intellect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Intellect is the airplane. It's the plane of air. And then he names the members, and then you're like, just like in the book of Ezekiel, people interpret it to be naming the Klipot, which are also reflected in the Genesis school of the first 42 letters of Bereshit when they get to what is it, void and emptiness. There's four different words that are used, chaos or whatever. When we translate to English or whatever, I don't remember what all the Hebrew is, but they relate it to the four sections of a nut. And so there's what's enshrouding the actual emanated flow. It is the essence of the thing, and it obscures that. And so in the film, you're looking at a breakdown of all of those layers of the Klipot, and for him to say, these are the members of the airplane. Now You basically he's said here's the intellect. Here it is in your culture where you think he's telling the kid, oh, you're looking at me like I'm this bit scary, esoteric. You're like, it's mysterious, you know? And he's like, hey, even in your pop culture is this thing that we're looking at here. Like he gets that easily. He's like, oh, what are the members of the airplane? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally. I feel like yeah, and they make the point that he's a very wise man, right? But then I remember why I was thinking of this because the storm, right?
Yes.
So this coming storm. So what do we in that movie? The storm starts. You mentioned that it's when the kid is confronting the bully about the money.
Hmm.
But it really starts, the scene just before is when he changes the grade.
Yes.
And I was thinking of that in terms of the golem, of changing truth and death. He changed the truth.
Right. I've had the same thought actually. Yes.
Yeah, and I was, okay, so I was wondering if there was other, I know that golem sort of motif is really common. I wasn't sure if, I don't know if there was sort of more.
There's a lot. I mean, the guy that the fact that the guy was cheating with cards, who did the meticulous or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's working on all this Kabbalah and then killing it at a card game. Why? Because 52 cards. It's the tarot deck minus the major arcana and four of the royals.
Correct, yeah.
And so how is he able to translate it? It actually makes perfect sense that you could be able to do that if you went far enough with understanding all of that, you know, because it's the most basic, you know. But the fact that he would use that for on that level to gain wealth, and then the fact that he gets arrested for the anality, you know, and so it basically the whole film to me, and The Big Lebowski does the same thing, has satires on the state of Israel and Zionism as a qliphothic enshroudment of the essential emanation. And so with The Big Lebowski, they do it in the scene where he's like, there's a few places there. I would love to do a video with this. I recommend you do a video with this, where when they're in the bowling alley and you look behind John Goodman, there's a bowling ball that says Holy Star. I even say Holly Star, but I think it's Holy Star. And you can know the 8-pointed star is outside of the thing. The star, thought he's not a star,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But it's when he pulls out the dog, and it's a Pomeranian or whatever. And he's like, "Why are you taking care of the dog?" And he's like, "Well, it's Cynthia's dog or whatever." And he's like, "But you know, he's taking care of her dog just like he's still a Jew." And he's like, "I converted to Judaism when I married Cynthia." And he's like, "What do you turn in your library card? You stop being Jewish, you know?" And then you have fucking Jesus comes up and he's like, this is maybe another scene, but the same spot. He's like, "What is this day of rest shit? Don't matter to Jesus." Because, of course, the Sabbath doesn't matter to Jesus,
Right, right, right.
you know? And then he's wearing the purple, and you're like, the purple, red and blue, purple being Sirius, the middle pillar. But then he's 8-year-olds, dude. It's the same thing that they did in Serious Man with the guy with the fucking rest stop or wherever he got caught, you know? They're playing on this thing of the perversion, and then they're associating that with the bizarro. What the klipot are is the opposite of tetragrammaton. So they mirror tetragrammaton, but they do it in a twisted way. It's Crowley's other name, you know, not his other name, but the other,
Mm.
instead of Aleph and Lamed flanking the name, where it's L is bookending, you know, the abbreviation for
So,
Elohim.
do you
It's
take that as
ox,
like,
ox, goad, yeah.
that's interesting. I'm struggling to understand what would be the purpose of perverting it in that sense, in the portrayal of it. Is it like demonizing the unity of the two pillars?
It's showing the nature of when you're doing something in a left hand path. you're relating to something that would like you don't gonna have a baby through anality. People can do what they do. I got no beef with that. I'm not judging that. It's just a fact that you don't produce the child
Sure,
through the
sure.
act. There's what is the point? Oh, it's just strictly this, you know. And so the klipo are mirroring, so everything is the opposite. So in the same way with with Jesus with the 8-year-olds, that's a statement. It's basically what that scene is when Jesus walks when John Turturro walks up to John Goodman and the folks, and he's like, "What is this day of rest shit?" That's literally the Catholic Church walking up to Zionism because he converted to Judaism and he's violent as all hell. He's a Vietnam guy. So he's like the
Yeah.
war of Israel.
The colonialist warrior, yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, he's that. He's America and Israel at the same time. And so he's like, it's like the church walking up to what's become of Judaism. Not actual Judaism, but
Yeah,
fucking
yeah, yeah.
John
I got
Goodman.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You follow me? Walter.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
check. Yeah. And so, but there's another thing too when he says the it's like Lenin said, and he's talking about Lenin. I can't remember how to say it. What is it? The but he's like Steve Buscemi on the other side being like, "I'm the walrus. I'm the walrus," and he's like, "No, wrong Lenin or whatever." And there's a sign behind his head, behind Walter's head that says "fucking hit the head,"
Hit the
and
head. Okay,
and he
okay.
says "fucking the walrus." He's saying John Lennon, and he's like, hit the head. You know, there's something fucking crazy going on because you look over there and you're like, the Holy Star. He's got the dog. You got the dog. You got the dog with the star, dog star, Sirius. Jesus walks up wearing purple, Sirius. He's Jesus. He's the Messiah. Book of Isaiah. You know what I'm saying? You get where I'm going with
Yeah,
that?
I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, but everything's not that. It's something else, and that's the kicker. You're not looking at the thing in and of itself. You're looking at the shell. So here's how it's going to express itself.
Hmm.
Repression, sublimation. When you repress something, it ends up sublimating into something else. And so,
Mm.
and sure enough, 8-year-olds and fucking, the rest stops.
Mm.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about that without being, without sounding like the pedophile one is easy because everyone's like, oh, fuck those people. But when you go, it's like people got so upset with Kevin Spacey, and I can understand why. Super inappropriate. And at the same time, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, he admits to being gay. People got really upset about that, and I'm like, have people not seen what gay porn is actually like? Because when Amy lived in the Castro, and we had this movie place that we would go to rent videos, and they had like a lot of porn because it's a Castro video store, and they would have like porn playing when you go in there. I was like, wow, men get really fucking aggressive with each other in this, like, because male on male is like it can be really something. And I'm like, all the people like, saying, who are saying, like, for the gays, are like, don't, Kevin Spacey, don't fucking, we've been fighting to not have him look this way. And
To
then,
not have what?
well, that you've been fighting for gay rights and all this. And I have no qualms with that, the intensity that happens, and it's not my thing, it's not my bag. But it's if you want to watch fucking male on male, so they're like, oh, looking at the things that came out around Kevin Spacey. And I'm like, do they not realize that that's like how men generally like he maybe it works for him 8 out of 10 times. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard to talk
Well,
talk about it without sounding like I'm excusing it because I'm not. Because let me qualify, it's inappropriate. And
yeah.
at the same time, the thing there though that's crazy is the fucking House of Cards. He's basically on his way to being president in the show or whatever, and he goes to Bohemian Grove, and fucking Trump has never been to Bohemian Grove from what I understand, and he's like, upset that he never got invited to the party or whatever. But isn't it weird that we're holding the actor to the higher standard
Exactly.
than
Hmm.
the actual guy that's like he's playing a part representing. And then even that it's called fucking House of Cards.
House of Cards. Yeah, I know. Oh man.
Like the cards, the Arcana. He's at Bohemian Grove. The whole thing with Alex Jones being one of the, who got the whole alternative media to go along with like, okay, this is it. Now we have a genuine variable. This is the guy. And you're like, dude, you're fucking against everybody. George Bush, Obama, fucking whatever. And now you're like telling us this. And I'm like, dude, he filmed fucking Bohemian Grove with
Oh,
what's his name? Who's the guy who did his own documentary also? Um,
yeah, and the British guy.
yeah, who eventually down the road would be the only man in the world with complete access to all of Kubrick's archives for a period of time, which is evidenced in his documentary Kubrick's Boxes.
Correct.
And so, isn't it
Ron,
odd then
not
that
Ron
Eyes Wide
Johnson.
Shut would be released a year to the day prior to the infiltration of Bohemian Grove by Alex Jones?
Is his
Um,
name Johnson? Something
John
with an R.
Ronson,
John? I thought it was with an R.
John,
John Ronson. Oh, not Ron Johnson, but John Ronson.
I believe so.
I said Ron Johnson.
Ron John, I have a friend named Ron John. Um, but yeah, so
Um,
it's just it's a peculiar point that you're like you have the closest representation in a film to an elite ritual party,
yeah.
and then you have the actual infiltration of an elite ritual party a year to the day with the guy who would have access to Kubrick's archives with speaking to the Golden Bough. That's why that's significant because of Kubrick's obsession with the Golden Bough, meaning what happens at Bohemian Grove, which is a twist. It's the other name version of this wheel that you just showed me in one of those previous pictures.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of it going, it's like it's funny that you said the counterclockwise, clockwise thing because I'm thinking about that and I'm like, oh, because basically the whole thing of like the ritual in reverse, where instead of killing the king, you're killing the outsider fool who would challenge the king, and that's what we've been seeing over and over again, being ritualized.
Right. We're not actually letting the fool take over.
We're not letting it happen.
So I guess, the thought, well, oh, maybe, um, I do feel like, again, it's these weird symbolics because with Obama was basically, I don't mean this like in a racist way, but there's the racial overtone of like him being the slave made king, right?
Mm-hmm.
That like the idea of him as the first black president is like this elevation of like, oh, this rags to riches, like, okay, it's this overcoming, it's this whatever. So that literally is like the slave made king, which is integral to the Golden Bough story. And then I feel like with Trump, it's like the fool made king, right? It's this um it's still like the quote unquote fresh blood of like
Right.
the whole point of having a slave become the king was that this is really bringing a new energetic. It is the revolution,
Right.
and it allows for the energy to be renewed.
Well,
Uh,
he's still it. I mean, he is that archetype.
Correct.
But he is that archetype being reflected with all the corruption that we've put off, like that we've put
Mm-hmm.
off holding accountable.
Well, right,
So,
because
so with
I guess
Obama
all I'm
not
saying is,
holding
oh,
Dick
yeah,
Cheney and fucking all of that shit, all those
well,
people
precisely,
accountable for war
because
crimes, we end up
so,
here.
yeah, so that's what I was saying. Like these rituals are done half-assed because Obama is in he is symbolically the slave-made king,
Hmm.
but in reality, he's just another rich politician playing the part, right?
Hmm.
Trump gets to play the fool and the outsider, but in reality, he's just another rich politician playing the part. So these the symbolism is on point, but the your rituals are empty and ineffective. And if you look
Your
at
rituals are fake and American.
yeah, and they're not satisfying the old gods.
Hmm. Word. Because in order to satisfy the old gods, you need a genuine sacrifice. And if
Yeah,
you're weighing what it is that you're giving up for the sacrifice, then it's not a real sacrifice.
correct.
Real sacrifice has to come with the real intent, you
Right.
know.
So
and the
now
recognition.
they can offer up some of the populace, but again, it's the infrastructure, it is the power structure that is being demanded to be sacrificed. And I think that's why I was saying at the end of Wicker Man when he said next year the crops still aren't going to grow, and then you have to fucking be sacrificed. Your own people have to. And then here we are in an election year. Here are all these things where it's like you see the politicians willing to let people get hurt for their benefit, and what comes of that. Does there come a point for a real sacrifice? And probably the only thing that would hold off some pitchfork fucking demand for real sacrifice is some sort of jubilee, some sort of buyout. You have to bribe the populace to be part of your ritual.
Right. How are we going to give them incentive to take part, to play the role?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost 7 a.m. here, man.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
fucking
it's almost
fried.
4 a.m. here. So yeah, I'll let you go, man. But thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you talking to me tonight, and I'll talk to you in the next few days. I guess we'll talk on Sunday, all right?
All right, man.
All
Cool.
right. Have a great night.
You too. Peace.
Peace.